Ipswich Public Schools aspires to empower all students to be global citizens who are effective communicators, analytical problem solvers, and savvy consumers of information. We propose to do this through an emphasis on communication, critical thinking, creativity, self-management, perseverance, and collaboration. Students will be active partners in authentic learning, offering voice and choice and demonstrating competency.
Thank you. All right, announcements and special acknowledgements. The next school committee meeting will be held Thursday, February 27th at 7 here in the Ensemble Room. Our public hearing on the proposed FY26 school budget will be held that same night on February 27th at 7. A copy of the FY26 proposed budget is located on the homepage on the district website, and hard copies are available to view at the central office at 1 Lord Square. Communications Subcommittee will meet Thursday, February 13th at 5 remotely. Policy Subcommittee will meet Tuesday, February 25th at 7. And the schools will be closed Monday, February 17th through Friday, February 21st for school vacation week. And district offices will be closed Monday, February 17th. Yep.
We do have kind of a very special acknowledgement. And earlier this month, Ipswich lost. I'm such a crier. Mr. Howie Bowman. I'm going to read a little bit from his obituary, and then I'll ask for a moment of silence. But Howie worked at Winthrop School as a head custodian for 23 years, and later became the crossing guard in front of the school for 18 years. He became good friends with teachers, principal, administrative staff, and of course, the ladies in the kitchen. He loved seeing all the kids coming and going from school every day. And this was just the top of the iceberg of who Howie was, anybody who knew him. So we're going to have a moment of silence for Howie Bowman tonight.
Thank you, Jen. Does anybody else have any announcements or special acknowledgements? Okay, moving along. We're at public comment.
Can I add one more? The elementary school building working group is meeting on the 26th at 6 also.
Great, thank you. All right, public comment is not a discussion, debate, or dialogue between individuals and the school committee. It's an individual's opportunity to express an opinion on issues within school committee's authority. While the committee and/or administrators will not typically respond during public comment, the chair, as presiding officer of the meeting, may choose to if she seems it expeditious. Further, should the chair believe that an issue falls outside the purview of the school committee, she may request that a citizen direct it to the appropriate person or body so that the matter is given proper consideration. It is limited to 3 minutes per person, a total of 15 minutes overall, and this will be the only opportunity during this meeting for members of the public to comment. Right, I'm seeing none, so we will move on. We're going to go a little bit out of order. We are going to jump to FY26 budget discussion, specifically for questions for the administrators. If needed, we can pick it up afterwards, but any questions for them we'll start with.
So thank you very much. Typically, we meet back-to-back nights, and the administrators are available the second night to answer any follow-up questions that the school committee either asked at the first meeting, or if you have any other questions this evening. So I asked the four administrators and 4 building administrators and the 2 central office administrators to join us this evening to do just that. So I believe in your packet this evening is a document that Tracy and the principals put together regarding some of the questions surrounding the comprehensive health position and the drama and dance position. Or it did make the
To be
folder, yes?
locked in the folder, from what I can see.
An ASC, it's the,
SC budget question.
Yeah, we got it, thank you. We got it.
You guys haven't read it. Sorry, we hadn't seen it, so give us a minute.
Yeah.
What am I gonna do?
I know that there were some other questions that folks had that
Refresh your screen and that will
were
show.
asked at the end of the meeting, I think after, or through email. Folks want to fire away, they're here and raring to go.
This is a long document.
I guess it'd be helpful maybe just to you or one of the administrators to kind of summarize some of these questions, so the discussion is, well, the document's available, but the discussion can be public.
Maybe I'll read through them and,
Yeah, or
Mary?
summarize, yeah.
Yeah,
There's
okay.
like a
So
lot
they have
here.
it, so
Yeah.
just summarize what, sort of what the question was and
Okay.
what we, how we went
Okay.
about answering it.
so just so you know, this process was, the questions were shared with us, I created the doc, did initial draft, shared it with the principals, who then added in, so we've all been in collaboration about it. So the first question is talking about why the World Language Program. We wanted to be very clear to say that the World Language Program at the elementary level did exactly what the intent of the original Payne grants were. I went back and did a deep dive into those original grants. It was Payne grant funded even before there were new standards for world language. Those didn't come until 2021. So this was a very innovative program by prior principals and a group of teachers. It was meant to be an enrichment program, not teaching a language, but more cultural awareness. And so in looking back over notes, there had always been concerns that it wouldn't be financially feasible over time. It's a beloved program. I love the program. The principals do too. In a tight budget year, when we look especially at the demands of literacy and math and the other standards, it's a hard decision. We also point out that it wasn't actually in the principal's original budget submission to cut the program, but then we were told we needed to make more cuts, we understand, and because of looking at the scope and sequence of all the coursework, unfortunately, this is one that we had to recommend. Let's see. So you asked, are there other ways students at the elementary level are being taught cultural awareness? And if this program is cut, will we continue to do so? Absolutely. We're very lucky to have FRIES. The Wit and Wisdom curriculum includes a lot of culturally appropriate and culturally representative texts, which is one of the reasons why we chose it. We have amazing library media specialists who really prioritize cultural awareness, and so that is something that we will definitely continue to grow and value. We also noted, since the program was, or I'll say it a different way, when the Payne grants were originally written for the elementary world language position, there wasn't a robust middle school program yet. It had just existed in the 8th grade. And so since then, we've brought in 6th, Spanish and French, 7th, the same. Students take one language 1 year, one language the other, and then they choose in 8th grade. And we've seen as a result the 6 through 12 world language program just really flourish and grow. It didn't exist when the elementary position was brought in. And so that's something that we also feel strongly has changed, in part because the standards came along and we were able to build it. Let's see. Someone had asked if we could get feelings from staff about the cut. So we did some research And we talked with IEA union rep who expressed, and we understand that it's awkward to give your feedback about a program in which a colleague will be cut. So we don't feel it's appropriate to ask for that reason. However, anecdotally, over time, without even talking about the world language program, we all know the elementary schedule is jam-packed. And we have requirements from the state on time on learning, and we are right there, super close. And as we keep seeing students' needs, and especially in literacy and math, grow, we can't keep adding things. We have to think about how we present that. So long story short, no, we're not going to ask. We don't think it's appropriate. The union has shared that with us. We understand. But we do know the schedule is very tight. Then it shifts into questions about the health program. Do you have any follow-up questions about the
I was going to say, should we?
world language?
Yeah, maybe we
okay.
check in on that first.
Oops, I was told not to touch the microphone. Sorry. So I wonder if there is, we're all disappointed, obviously, that it's going to be cut. I have two thoughts. One is, it is a compromise if it was just for the 4th and 5th graders. I don't know if that would even be in the budget, something like that, not, from the start of elementary school, but for the 4th and 5th grades, or just the 5th grade or something. That was a thought. The other thing would be for the pain grant changes that, refining or whatever, is to have it if it's going to be a multi-year, have it funded for the 3 years, or have the requests come in, factoring, 3 years of, maybe 100% pay on the first one, and then 50 on the next one, and 50 on the next one. Just, so we're aware of the cost for 3 years. And the second thing for us to do, for it to be billed or talked about as a 1-year program instead of a pilot program, right? I think there's times where we're like, we're going to see how it goes. And if it goes well, the assumption is it'll be grabbed up in the budget. But I think if we say it's a let's enjoy it while we have it, and then just to sort of set that expectation, because people aren't aware of that and they just think it's part of it. So those are my thoughts.
Yeah, that's a good
Can I
perspective.
ask just a clarifying question about the first point? Were you suggesting offering it just to 4th and 5th grade, or offering it to lower elementary and not?
I was suggesting the 4th and 5th. I don't know what that would cut the cost. Would it cut the cost enough, is the question, for it to even be considered, or just the 5th grade, so they have that step before they go into 6th, or maybe not. That's just an idea.
Interesting idea. The other part I would consider is it's very hard to find elementary world language teachers. It's rarity and a lovely thing that we have. When we tried to find one for Winthrop, when the Mandarin teacher left, we couldn't find anyone in any language. And when we came to moving the current Spanish teacher, who's fantastic, to be half-time at Doyen and half-time at Winthrop, that was a hard ask, and she rose to the challenge. So to think about, we'd have to be creative, to think about having someone have even a less, I don't know what that would look like, just 4th and 5. Not to say it's impossible, but
Right. Figured I'd just throw it out there.
I don't know.
You,
You got to go to the mic, sorry.
welcome back.
In looking at the schedule, 4th and 5th is actually the most full when you
Okay.
factor in. So it's a great idea, and it's something that we've all kind of racked our brains around. How do we make this work?
Yeah.
But when we look at all of the schedule demands, there
Right.
just isn't the minutes. As of right now, our 4th and 5th grade students are actually participating on a trimester basis, and the time allotted is less than in current specialists for other programs. So it's just tricky. It's a really
Sure.
great idea, and like Dr. Wagner, spoke to, we care deeply about the program. Just finding the time to do that amongst the other curriculum pieces have been really hard.
Yeah. No, and that's great to know that you've looked at all different ways to try to figure it out, and thank you for explaining that.
Of course, and thank you for your idea. Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate the thinking about the other ways that we explore languages and culture, you know, even if it's not a class, there are lots of other ways that we do that. And if we can sort of make a commitment to continue that, because you can learn about cultures and language through ELA or through science or, you know, through all kinds of things, so.
Absolutely, and when the very first paying grant was written for this journey, it was for a PLC that was exploratory because it was before the standards, and that was their recommendation. And I
Professional learning
remember-
community.
Say again?
PLC's.
Professional learning community, so a group of teacher leaders and administrators. And sorry for my edubabble. Thank you, Dr. Blake. And it was the finding, and I remember being surprised by it, that at the elementary level, it's really not about learning the language, it's about cultural awareness.
Exposure.
And so that can be met in many different ways. And I think we're doing a much better job of that all these years later, I'm proud to say. So that is something we can continue to uphold, writing the school improvement plans, I would even say.
Yeah, and so having had exposure to that program, even for the limited number of years we had it, the awareness is in the schools.
I
think,
feel
and
much so in other ways.
Thanks.
Can you, in comparison, talk about how the new health teacher is going to work into a schedule? And I did bring this up at the last meeting, if the world language program could be reimagined. And I brought up the history, and originally it was 2 people. We abruptly lost Mandarin. And then this current position that is up for elimination is 1 person covering 2 schools. They get very little language time. If it were reimagined back to what it was supposed to be, as it feels very watered down at this point because of the loss of that person and spreading it out. So I'm thinking that if it could be reimagined in a way that better delivered, more than 25 minutes, more than on a video in the classroom, could that work, and how is health going to be rolled out as far as time frame in the day? Because now we're taking away language is what is being proposed, but how is health being layered in to what grades and time frame during the
I
day?
think you're asking,
Yeah,
Yeah.
can we kind of get the second part of that? I want to make sure we wrap up
Okay.
world language. I see how they're related, but
Yeah.
I think we're
I
going to
think
kind of
your
get to that.
first question is, how would we reimagine a world language
Yeah,
position?
So say in a different scenario that you weren't going to eliminate world language, how would you make it different and better than the current video option and a teacher spread very thin?
I think we'd have a longer school day. I mean, when we went about rethinking the teacher's schedule, many, many meetings with Adam and Amy and myself and the teacher, I don't know how many schedules on paper we had, about a lot of what it could look like, and yet fit within the current schedule. And I do feel like what we came to was the best possible solution. So within the existing structure, maybe we can think about how the curriculum would look differently. But within the time that we have and within the intent of that position, I think it met it. It was fun, it's joyful, it's cultural awareness. I think it meets that. But if we wanted a more robust program, I think we'd be looking at the scheduling of the school day itself and the time on learning. Thinking really outside the box, maybe it's embedding it alongside another content area.
Isn't that the way it started? Like I remember hearing like Mandarin was taught in art class.
That was also something that happened during COVID because we needed our world language teachers to teach other subject areas. And so it just sort of happened. But I don't know, I would have to look back before. But I do remember during COVID that our world language teachers took on other grade level content areas.
I just wanted to speak to the art, the art class. That was a separate project. It was like a pen pal project that they had specifically a couple years at third grade, where the third graders would work with our Mandarin teacher at the time, and also Mrs. Lee, and they did some art projects as well as learning some language, and then they would converse. So that was sort of in addition to at the time, and there was a different monies outside of world language appropriated for that we included as a component of the art budget. So that was even more, I guess, at the time. So I just wanted to clarify that.
Thank you. That's what I'm remembering.
Program. Yeah, I remember that too. It was the pen pals with the art. So that might be a way to think about it, would be to integrate world language or the standards around cultural awareness into other disciplines, which I believe they already are to a bigger extent in many ways.
And that wasn't a year-long program either. It was just ran for a few weeks. So maybe, thank you for bringing that up. Maybe that would be something that we could explore or bring back. However, you know, it certainly wasn't as much as a teacher, but there was like an additional, I think, $900 per class for the cost of that program. But it wasn't year-long.
Yeah, so
Art Link is what it was called.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Just remember it.
So as we move forward through the budget process, I'm not a big fan of letting go of world language. I think we live in a very white community. I think we're a very white board. I think that teaching language is teaching diversity, and I think that it would be a huge opportunity missed to let it go. But I wonder if there could be a less, not that it's expensive, but a lesser price tag on a language program that looks different than what we're doing now, but still ensures that young kids are learning that there's differences around the world, and when they hear an accent of maybe a classmate, that these are differences, and this takes, I mean, teaching diversity at such a young age takes them all the way up through high school. And it's immeasurable, like the problems and the discipline problems and the cultural differences. What if the seniors and juniors of today had language in kindergarten? So I'm just wondering, I just don't want to see, I don't want to have to, in the next few weeks, let world language go at the elementary level.
I think that you bring up a really interesting point, particularly around our cultural awareness. We have students from many different countries with many different languages across the district, and in particular at Winthrop, but our two biggest populations are our Portuguese population and our Afghan population. And I just came from a FRIES meeting where we were talking about bringing in special programs, like a Brazilian Beats program, because that was the most joyful day a couple of years ago when we had an Afro-Brazilian troupe come. And I do see the need for understanding with different things that come up with children and cultural awareness, and how great it might be if I looked into something like ArtLink, where we are actually partnering with a Brazilian pen pal or an Afghan pen pal and given like more of a connection. I think that would be a really nice idea for like a TWIG grant, completely innovative, something that's not impacting the whole year school schedule, but is giving a little bit more in-depth look at culture beyond that like one-off of a school assembly or something like that. So I welcome that idea, and I'm happy to look into it.
Okay.
Thank you. I feel like for me, it's tricky. It's a tricky situation we're in, but like, you know, if we're in a position where we're facing a potential cut, like, is it a complete cut, or is there kind of like, well, it's not gonna look like this, but it could look like that. So I like hearing that thinking, and, you know, there's a lot of potential there, I think. Any other questions about world language?
Yeah, I just thought, I don't know, you'll be able to tell me more about the pain grant. Can there be a new one submitted to subsidize the program for a few more years instead of like, you know, in the budget. I mean, I know there's a budget issue and there's a time in the schedule issue. So I don't know as though we'll be able to fix both, but, you know, I don't know if they can request, that can be requested again to subsidize it for the budget.
Oh, I mean, under the current paying grant guidelines, they can request it, but it doesn't have to be granted.
Right. Right.
I guess to speak to that second part, though, around the logistics, which obviously is a crucial part of this, if there was the money available, does it feel like there's an appetite to, it sounds, oh, I don't want to speak for you. Is there an appetite for continuing as it is if the budgetary constraints weren't there? Or do you feel like the logistical piece of it outweighs the budgetary piece?
I think at least for us at the Doyon, the logistic piece is too challenging. I think that, you know, as Jen and Amy were kind of brainstorming a little bit, the idea of embedding an outside program into the school, they would be more palatable to teachers and kids. Again, just looking at our master schedule, it's so difficult to integrate so many pieces. And even at school council tonight, we were talking about what's tight and what's loose. Like, what do we really want to hold to heart as a community, and what do we let go of? And I think our decision as a community needs to be, how do we integrate in these cultural voices and do it in a way that makes it work in our schedule? So I think if we're able to kind of think together, you know, as an elementary team around what can we do to integrate more opportunities, that would allow us to maintain this cultural awareness without taking away the time on learning that kids are currently losing. Yeah.
Sorry, I just have one more thing. Sorry, that's it. I feel like that is a great idea that you were talking about, Jen, is having a more awareness of the world and the cultures and stuff. But I do feel like that's getting away from the language part. You know, and it's the class that people are concerned about getting cut is the language. I just wanted to, if it was, you know, going off to a cultural awareness, that's great. But I feel like that's a different class than the language class.
I do think, though, if you were to go back and to read the original paying grant, that was the mission of the world language
Sorry, I
teacher,
didn't read that.
was for the exposure to cultural awareness. And yes, you know, they learned some basic words or songs or numbers along the way, but it was never from the elementary perspective, nor is it like if you were to read some of the philosophy around teaching language, that elementary school age children should have an exposure to other cultures, but we're not, in a sense, at the elementary level, getting them ready so they can like hop into Spanish 1 in 6th grade. You know what I mean?
Right.
So although they did learn language, the intent was exposure and awareness of other cultures.
Oh, that's great. I stand corrected then.
If you look
That's good
at
to know. That's good to know.
the world language standards very much focus on that piece of it as well from the state,
Gotcha.
which is interesting.
Okay, that's good to know.
Thank you. All right, now guide us on the health.
So moving to the health, which is the next chunk of questions. So I just wanted to name that the recommendation for the health, comprehensive health position came a totally different journey than the recommendation for either rethinking or eliminating the elementary world language position. Those are two different streets in two different cities. So the comprehensive health came through the curriculum review cycle, which is now year 2. I know you've been in the loop about that. And so near the end of the cycle, after looking at the standards and doing a gap analysis and looking at our current curriculum, the Compass team makes a recommendation to myself and to administrators. And so what they found, and the team is a team of teacher leaders who work with principals and myself, was that the comprehensive health standards, which were new last year, are giant and include now many more categories and kinds of comprehensive health support than the former ones did. So the team went through and made a giant document of all the elementary world language, comprehensive health standards, the ones that are currently being covered. PE is included in that and also is separate. and then made a giant list, and I don't know if it's linked in the doc that you have, but we can share it additionally, of, I think it's at least 4 pages of new elementary comprehensive health standards that are not PE standards, and they're not covered in the current health curriculum, and that the PE teachers who were on that committee felt like it was beyond their availability in the schedule to cover. And it was the recommendation to hire a shared comprehensive health teacher specifically to teach those standards. So that's the journey that that pathway came. And also on that doc is a recommendation for what that would look like. So we can get you access to that. And along the way, so the other question is, what would it look like? So this year, that team's focus has been on vetting comprehensive health curriculum. We want to purchase something for this. Sometimes we write it ourselves, but this is an instance where we would purchase pre-printed curriculum and then adapt it as needed. And so the state published a list, a guide to curriculum that they felt best met their new standards. Our team has spent the year going over those. They narrowed it down to a list of 5. We did demos, we talked to reps, we're talking to other schools, and they are to the point where they've narrowed it down to one curriculum called Health Smart, which is also the most frequently used curriculum in this area. It meets the standards, and at the elementary level, it goes by grades. It's a nice match, and probably you might not be able to get them, but it's linked in the doc, so I can share those for you as well. So that would be for grades K through 5. And then at the middle school level, we currently, this is one of your questions too, we have a health teacher, we have a health curriculum. However, the team found that a giant chunk of the high school standards moved down in comprehensive health to the middle school level. So the health teacher at the middle school has been involved in this curricular review process, would take his current curriculum, which he's written, and would adapt in the gaps from Health Smart. Same thing, we have a 9th grade health class. She's written her own curriculum. There's not a new teacher needed, but there are gaps there, which are new standards, because the old comprehensive health standards didn't even include things like social media or computers. That's how old they were. So she will take these standards and she will embed them in. So it's a very long way of saying that the team is recommending Health Smart as the curriculum K through 9. And we can get you access to that. And we've been planning later on.
Access to it,
Oh, you
I'm
do?
sorry,
Great.
It's in the document. It is
I'm
linked.
glad. So the team, we have a meeting together in March where they're putting together their final recommendations. And we've always planned, as with IM, as with Wit and Wisdom, they'll come and present to you along with me and show you and talk about that process. Let's see, so I talked about the middle school. And then you move into some questions about the dance theater teacher. I'll just mention there, the question was, is the dance theater elective teacher connected to the health, comprehensive health? It's not under those standards, although those standards house PE, and of course we could certainly argue that dance addresses PE standards, but there's actually a whole set of gorgeous dance standards that's in arts. And so the arts standards for the state have a whole section about dance. It can count as a PE elective, so it's not adjacent necessarily to the health requirements. That's a different set.
But it would fulfill the PE requirement.
I reached out to the state to make sure, and I have not heard back, but I'm sure they'll get back to me so quickly, and then I will let everybody know. But they're housed in the arts. But I believe that if we can code it along with the PE standards, yes.
I have a question on the elementary shared health teacher. So I'm looking at the standards, and I guess maybe this is for the elementary principals. So when my kids were in elementary school, there was, I think, one social worker, and that position covered, in my recollection, some of the things in here. And so I want to understand what are the positions in the elementary schools that are doing this sort of work, and how would this role differ from, an adjustment counselor or a social worker, and just what are the pieces? What are the positions and what do they
Principal
do?
want to take that? So I don't think
Like healthy
any of our,
relationships?
none of
mental,
our
emotional health.
current social workers, adjustment counselors address health standards at all. They're not teaching in that way. They're teaching, of
Okay.
course, with children, but they're not using curriculum. So that's a
Okay.
change, it sounds like, since,
Okay.
yeah.
I can speak to this maybe a little bit more clearly as a parent of students who went through another district and did have a health and wellness curriculum, of which it was very, clear on beyond like just like some of the nutrition or food group work that some of the PE teachers do embed in their curriculum. Like I've been in Mr. Falconeri's PE class, and he has a movement activity like, run to the grain food group, and state 3 activities or three different types of food that belong in that category, and go over here and do this, right? And it's probably way more involved than that in terms of how I'm explaining it. But like a true health and wellness curriculum would start to tackle some more difficult conversations, even at the elementary age appropriate, whether they were, about caffeine or what your body needs, or vaping, or, media health and screen time. Like, we don't delve super deep in that. It might be a touch upon like nutrition in PE class, but it's not like a curriculum that we're, doing like a unit study on. And so that really has a much more vertical integration of what is appropriate at the younger ages. And then you can build from grade to grade, certainly more than we have the time to teach in PE class now.
I think just to kind of echo Amy's point, just in looking through the list of standards, there are certainly times where these topics come up implicitly or come up through conversations with kiddos. I think the real difference would be the explicit instruction of the curriculum versus the opportunities where these things come up organically, or maybe come up for a select group of students, or maybe come up for a group of students who are working with a particular teacher in a circumstance. It would be the formalization of the integration and implementation of these standards that would be different with the health teacher than with some of the other providers that you mentioned.
Okay.
I would say it's a lot more preventative than sort of when something pops and we have a conversation with a school adjustment counselor, and that, I don't want to use the word reactive, but is more like processing perhaps through something that has come up, and then doing some in the moment teaching, whereas, maybe this is much more like, laying the foundation, and so building upon that in a very concrete way that is a part of more of their core curriculum now.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question about the standards, the link that lists, there's a column that says practice, and then there's numbers within that column, like a 7, a 3, a 2.
That
What is that?
references the larger comprehensive health and PE document. There's
Okay.
7 practice areas, 7 or 8 practice
Seven or eight
areas.
practice areas, so the team had to begin by figuring out how to break it into the different, so there's different focuses within the comprehensive health. So that's coding for the team. It's
Okay.
not about a quantity of teaching or anything.
Okay.
It's the guide to where to look in the state frameworks to find it.
Okay, and then next question related, and you might have said this, you explained that I think the PE teachers got together to go over the standards, or what the,
So
You
it
named a
was
committee.
a Compass Committee, which at the beginning of curriculum review is a group of K through 12 teachers. So that was what Dr. Blake served on last year.
Yep.
And so my point in mentioning it was that that included PE and counselors from K through 12. And so this is the work of that team in its entirety.
okay. And I think you mentioned that the PE teachers thought that the standards were too far beyond their scope to be able to integrate into a PE class.
Not to speak for them, but my understanding is not that it was too far beyond their scope, but that they now have their own hefty bunch of new PE standards. That's a whole different section that they need to cover, and that to do that with fidelity and this in our current schedule would be very tricky.
And in the past, I recall that in fifth grade is human growth and development, where the fifth grade teachers and sometimes a male PE teacher would come into the room. And a lot of these topics, as I recall, were covered in that fifth grade. And it seems like a lot of these topics in the standards, like recycling, reuse, and like, or define bullying and teasing. This just seems like that is happening in most elementary school classrooms. Like, is there any way to, I don't know, assign different topics of the standards to the classroom teachers?
We could look at that. I think that the majority of the standards to the team in my review are more curricularly specific to comprehensive health in a standalone setting, but we could certainly go through and cull the ones that would be fitting within a typical classroom setting. And also thank you for mentioning the fifth grade puberty curriculum. The fifth or the comprehensive health teacher would certainly be involved in that, take a leadership role. We would look at what is currently being taught, and we would look at the curriculum from HealthSmart and make decisions around it, but we'd certainly not lose that important unit, which also is mandated by the state, so.
So in addition to the fifth grade, I think it's human growth and development is what it was
Human
called?
growth and development is part of the comprehensive health standards. So if you don't see it here, it might be because these are what is not being covered, and we are already covering the human growth and development standards.
And then did you mention already, and this is the question, I got a little ahead of myself at the beginning of the meeting, but, so it would be the same teacher entering the classroom for each grade, so kindergarten through fifth. And time frame during the day over the course of the year?
So the recommendation from Compass is way up at the top of that
Yep.
doc. We'd have to look at this together with the principals. This is a magical person who would, of course, go between both schools. It's a hard position. I think a really fun one for the right person, though. Ideally, we would, of course, have more than one comprehensive health teacher, but we're requesting one to be shared. So the team's recommendation was splits time between both schools, a 30-minute class once per week. They talk about the number of classes to be covered and also human growth with the fifth grade teams. So I hear you asking for specifics around the schedule many times, and I wish we had answers to those questions. And we'll continue to work on it. We've shared what we know. The scheduling process starts around now and involves lots of Post-its and spreadsheets and a little bit of hope and magic dust, and we figure out what we can do. So I wish I could tell you more, but that's where we're at.
Okay.
Yeah, feel free to add to that. Yeah, blood, sweat, and tears, and yeah. Yeah, it's hard. It's hard. Need a longer elementary today.
You know, I think we can't lose sight of the fact that there's only so many hours in the school day, and even within that school day, there's only so many minutes of teaching that the teachers are contracted to do. And so we need to be able to figure out what that's why the schedule as a whole is so challenging, trying to meet all of those requirements, because the different subject areas come with different requirements. We have contractual issues, we have different things that we want to continue to include in the schedule, and we can't lose sight of that. It's just there are so many moving parts, and you know, if any of these positions were to be included, then we have to revisit the schedule, and we understand that. But that's going to take some time to figure all that out.
These are on top of requests, in addition to what we need for our new Wit and Wisdom program, and on top of times for intervention blocks, flexible intervention blocks, and other requests that teachers have. So it really is amazing work that our principals and teams do with scheduling. It's quite hard.
Is the cost of the Health Smart curriculum included in our budget?
It is.
It is. So the team narrowed it down to 2 curriculums, and I got the price quotes for each and made sure whichever one that they went with, we would have it covered. The curriculum itself is not wildly expensive. I forget what it is, a couple thousand, I think, at the elementary is $6,700 at the middle school. Nice job, Peter. And John, I feel like it's like $1,500. Thank you, principals. So it's nominal compared to the cost of the salary of the teacher.
Amy, I know you talked about a different district that has a health teacher. Do we have any information on, do most other schools at the elementary level, I guess particularly have health teachers, or people starting to hire them because of these standards?
They're starting to hire them because of these standards. So our team are going on a day in March to observe the Health Star curriculum at a couple schools in Newburyport, and reporting back. And along the journey of finding a school for them to observe, I contacted many schools across Massachusetts. There are a number who are starting to have elementary curriculum for health and a standalone course. Most are in their first section or third year. My son goes to Medford schools. He's in 6th grade now. Shout out Grant. And came up through a not Health Smart, but a Nexus curriculum, which he and his friends called Feelings class, which was circled through their day, was health class. And so it is more and more common. In particular, when the new standards came out last year, it started to come up.
I have a question about the fairy dust scheduling piece of this. So I understand the complexities that would go into something like that. But in order for you guys to get to a place where you could come up with a proposal that is more fully baked, what would that entail? And given the complexity around it, is it a reasonable thing for you guys to spend time on if there isn't an approval yet in the budget for that?
I would say that the scheduling takes weeks to do. And so I would say that it would be a significant lift to do something that wasn't approved.
We started 2 weeks ago at Doyon for the fall in an effort to be proactive, and it's definitely very time consuming and involves interacting with a lot of different colleagues across the district, especially around music. So it is something that'll be important for us to think about if we do move forward with this in terms of figuring out how to fit into the schedule across both elementary schools.
I have one more question too, just more broadly. Obviously, there are lots of standards and these things are being changed on a relatively regular basis. So in the same way, world language was brought in, and I know we're not trying to compare these two, but it's hard. I mean, there's a lot of overlap here in terms of what we're talking about. So, if we spend the time and the resources to bring in this program, and then the standards change in a couple of years in some other arena, and then we're having the same issue where we're saying, now we've got to add more programmatic elements here, and we already don't have enough time in the day. Just, I guess, how are you guys keeping track of what those standards are, how they're core to the school improvement plans, to the strategic plan, to the cost centers in the budget? Just
It's a great question. Happy to talk anytime about the curriculum review cycle. So we have a 5-year curriculum review cycle that we're in our second 5-year. It's a waterfall chart, the teachers call it. It aligns with the Compass Committee. And so a lot of my work is working with teachers and principals and Dr. Blake in that. There's a regular series with which we review curriculum. The kink was that the side adjacent stream was that the world language elementary program
was approved through Payne grants before the state set out new standards. That particular program didn't go through the curriculum review cycle because it was innovative and because the folks at the time wanted that. The comprehensive health went through the curriculum review cycle. Those standards came out last year. The state has now reviewed all of the content areas and won't again for, I think it's safe to say, 8 to 10 years. And so this is set. So there are different ways of coming at a position. So position in comprehensive health, that went through the curriculum review cycle. That was a recommendation of that team versus world language, beloved program that came through Payne grants that wasn't attached to standards at that time because the new standards hadn't even been published. Came out 5 years before they did. So two very different avenues. And then the adjacent answer is that there's a whole cycle that I could talk about endlessly, so I won't, about the curriculum review, but happy to share any of that with you. But there's a set plan in place.
Any other,
Do you know about the whole budget?
what's that?
Is this just about the health or this general?
I think we're still on health, but then we can go to, actually, I have one question about the elective dance theater teacher. Would you consider that enrichment and enhancement?
What, say that again.
Would we consider that enrichment or enhancement? Could be viewed through that lens.
Okay, thank you.
That meaning this, the health position?
No, the dance.
The dance.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, Charlie, I guess we can open up for more questions for the administrative team.
Yes, I wanted to ask about the English position that is being removed. How would that affect class sizes for next year's classes?
Based on the spreadsheet that I created, double-checked with the English department head, Mr. Sargent, we have a little bit different interpretation of what the numbers could be at most, conservatively, or I would say my estimate is conservative, 1.5, the average class size would go up from 13.3 to like 14.8.
Oh, sorry, could you repeat that?
13.3 is the current, and it would go up to 14.8. If you look at it the way Mrs. Sargent did, just look at the pure mathematics of the thing and divide the number of students by the number of teachers, it would go up by about 2.5%, 3%, 3 kids. So they go from 13.3 to what is that, like 17 or 18? So.
How would that affect, just from my experience in high school, I know the average class size can be misleading because you'll have some classes where you have mid-20s, high 20s, and you'll have some where you have like 4. So how would that affect like the highest, like, I don't know what this particular teacher teaches, but let's say theoretically they taught like 9th grade English. Would that affect the sizes of that 9th grade English class by a lot, or would it be relatively the same?
So you're correct. So depending on how the schedule falls, you could have one class that has, 8 or 9 kids in it, and another class that has, probably low 20s. I can't remember, honestly, a class that has more than 25, except for some of Mr. Krieger's classes.
My sophomore year English class was huge. We had more than 23 kids. It was a huge, huge class.
So I think we also have to have perspective. So I think in Ipswich, we're accustomed to pretty small class sizes, where I think most districts, when you're talking about 25 kids, that's a pretty standard size class. Whereas here, we would consider that high.
Okay. And then this teaching position, which year was it? Was it there a particular, age group it focused on, or was it just broad subjects? Like what subjects would be lost? I guess I'm trying to.
A couple electives, if off the top of my head I can remember. We lost 3, just to reshuffle the deck. Because when you're looking at the schedule, you have to think about what the teachers are teaching, not just like what the classes are. Because you can't have teachers have, unless they're being very generous, more than 3 preps, 3 different classes they have to prepare for. We'd like to have them teach a class that they have taught before, if they didn't teach it. instead of having like a bunch of new classes that they have to prepare for. I like to make sure that every teacher has at least an honor section or an elective that they created, or at least that they're interested in teaching, to kind of make their schedule they have something to really look forward to. So there's a lot of factors. So in reshuffling the deck, I believe we lost an English 10 section, an American Lit section, and a senior writing class.
Creative
So
writing,
3. I think it was the creative writing one.
journalism.
No, not journalism.
Okay.
Oh wait, maybe it was journalism. I'd have to look. But we
Okay.
only lost 3 out of the 5 teaching sections we would lose. 3 of them were core classes, 2 of them were electives. But there's still some shuffling that could
Right.
happen too. Like if there's a class, an elective that looks like it's going to be under-enrolled, we couldn't run that elective, and we could shift one of those required classes sections back into that teacher's deck, into their schedule. So.
Other questions? Thank you for that.
Can I ask one more question back to the health curriculum in the elementary schools? I'm sorry. Mr. Mitchell, you're done. Phew. So I'm just looking at, for example, Winthrop. The budget highlight page that we were given last week, slide 44, and it's let's read. So increases 1 FTE school adjustment counselor, but reduction 0.5 school psychologist. So again, I'm going through my own history of when we used to have a feelings teacher enter the classroom. And that was Ms. Trevorrow at the time. She was the feelings teacher. And I'm wondering, what is the school adjustment counselor addition? Is any of that, or any of these new standards, able to be a feelings teacher that is not an additional health teacher?
So specifically, the reduction, the switch in the school psychologist and the counselor and
Yeah,
how
can
it
you talk
relates to
about
the
what
health.
that? Hi, Eric.
Do you want to take this first?
But I'm
Okay.
here in case.
All right. Yes, there was just some shifting that happened. We have seen such an increase in student needs, students' behaviors, students' mental health, students' access to the school adjustment counselor is sort of like we're running every day and not able to get to all of the needs. So it's not really a surprise that I think we would need an additional person in terms of running groups or individual therapy or counseling and things like that for, Deb Trevorrow. I didn't know her, but times 2, right?
Yep.
We also had some natural shifts where some new positions were made available through a new early childhood coordinator, a current school psychologist moved into that position. And I think I spoke to this a little bit last week, in that our current school psychologist, Rebecca Higgins, she mainly did all the evaluations for our special education referrals, reevals, annuals, initials, all of that. But also a portion of her job was the caseload. So she helped out the school adjustment counselor. So even though it looks like a 0.5 reduction of the school psychologist and a whole 1.0 increase of the school adjustment counselor, there was also some embedded pieces that our current school psychologist did. She probably had about a quarter of the school counselor caseload. So that is part of the shift. The 0.5 reduction is because Now, we're going to share the school psychologists across both elementary schools. Are not going to have a counseling caseload. They're only going to do evaluation. So that's why we feel like that will be manageable with that 1.0. And then looking to give more support now for the school adjustment counselor, an opportunity to bring in another teacher. What their work that they do is much more therapeutic, it's much more individualized, or it's very much targeted to social skills or bigger picture things that are happening with groups of students, whether you might have like a newcomer group or perhaps a group of students who are dealing with different things in families, like a divorce or things like that. Very different than, in my opinion, what like a health curriculum teacher would be teaching in terms of health, wellness, nutrition, prevention, and things like that. So I don't actually see those positions between health and school adjustment counselor as the same in any way. But I'll let Dr. Oxford speak to that in grander terms, but I popped up because you had said Winthrop, and so I was on the ready.
No, thank you, Amy.
I concur. Great job. Yes, I think she hit the nail on the head, really. I think, I think broadly, as I alluded to last week, the mental health crisis is real. Unfortunately, we know that. We know certainly post-COVID, everywhere, certainly not just in Ipswich, that has been the most pressing need and area of concern, in public schools and everywhere. Our highest referral rates of out-of-district students fall into that category. We have our highest levels of concern there. And so, but from a tier one, all students, supporting all students standpoint, all the way to the other end of the spectrum of our most specialized needs, from that social emotional therapeutic standpoint, is really the charge and the expectation of that two-person team, so to speak, of school adjustment counselors now at Doyon and Winthrop, which will now be more vertically aligned with the addition of our therapeutic positions at the middle and high school that we are implementing from both a reactive and proactive measure as well. So all that to say, I agree 100% with what Amy just said. I think, the school adjustment counselor's role is health, but really stops formally at mental health, and I think all the other aspects, the social components of texting and screen time and all the cyber stuff and physical health and all that stuff, I certainly think there will be opportunities for co-teaching or partner teaching or whatnot, right, as we really look to embrace and continue to have as a part of our school culture. But I would certainly agree that there are different lenses and areas of expertise that just are that much different, especially as you get into those comprehensive health standards. They're called that for a reason now, so.
And maybe I could have simplified the question so that the school adjustment counselor does not enter the classroom at all as a feelings teacher.
Not consistently. It's absolutely something that we are working on as I've, jumped in and just asked a lot of questions across both schools around what is that tier one. And when I say tier one, I really mean that whole group instruction, right, for all kids. There are absolutely pockets happening consistently. It's not happening in every pocket consistently. The addition of a second school adjustment counselor, it is the expectation, as we were just talking today about looking to look at kind of norming and updating what those proactive practices are. That's going to be at the forefront, really making sure that they are in the classrooms as much as they can and partner teaching, co-teaching, so to speak, with our gen ed teachers from that standpoint. But they also are going to have that responsibility on all the way to the other side from a special education, specially designed instruction standpoint, and also triaging and that as part of kind of that crisis response team. So as you can imagine, it's a very busy day, as it is for everyone, but there's a lot of unpredictables. And right now it's very glaring that it's really not a sustainable practice in our elementary schools to have one school adjustment counselor, frankly, pre-K to 5, doing both reactive and proactive and everywhere in between. So that's really the theory there. So
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Can I ask one more question around this too, sort of similar to what I was asking before about the world language? If the budgetary issue, again, was not on the table in terms of we were saying, yes, we're going to approve the spending on this, is the appetite there for you guys to figure out the logistics around how to incorporate this? What part? The health standard, like that teaching and instruction.
Could you say that one more time?
So if we approve this line item in the budget, the challenge around how to fit it in. Is the appetite there to figure that out, to
Oh
puzzle
my
through
gosh,
that?
of course. That's always the challenge of scheduling, is here are the courses we need to provide, here's the hours in the day, and we figure it out. It's a beautiful puzzle. So the appetite is absolutely there. It's a position we feel strongly about, we being a team of teacher leaders who've gone through a 2-year process towards this recommendation. So absolutely. If anyone wants to? No? Okay.
I think it's going to take a lot of creative thinking. So if we were able to integrate this type of a program, we'd have to get really creative. And I think, again, it goes down to us making a decision about what's important to our community and then finding the time to do it. Amy, Nikki, and I, alongside the teacher teams, have gotten really, really good, I think, at moving puzzle pieces around. But it's certainly getting to a point where we're reaching capacity with what we can integrate into our schedule. So, sorry. I feel loud from up here.
You're loud to the people that are watching on TV, but you're not loud in the room, because that doesn't amplify in the room. That just amplifies for the TV viewers.
So I guess to answer the question, we're going to work really hard to fit it in, but it is absolutely a challenge in making it work in the current schedule with the current demands.
I'll just say I appreciate the context of the different positions, and I think, Jen, you were asking what I was trying to ask at the beginning. I think, certainly pre-pandemic and beyond, looking back in time, I think that feelings teacher at Winthrop didn't have as large of a caseload, I imagine, and was able to do some of that preventive work. We're in a different time now when I think a lot of this responsibility is becoming on the schools to provide those services for kids, and the needs of kids are higher. So that helps me understand the different positions and what they do. And I think referring out, I imagine, is not, I've heard there's no one to refer to. So, the schools are taking on a lot of this. So it helps for us to understand that, because when we have to, explain the budget to people that know even less than we do about education, we have to understand the different roles and what they do and the need for them.
One of the, I'm sure there'll be additional questions about the budget as a whole. I'm going to throw this hand grenade now because I think it's important, and Tom and I just heard it this afternoon and only shared it with the budget subcommittee this afternoon, but we got our insurance rates, the set rate this afternoon. It's at the full 20% for next year. So we're looking at another $184,000 that is sort of in flux in the budget right now that we have to figure out, in addition to what was presented last week. So I think that's going to lead to some additional conversations at both the leadership team level and the school committee level as we move forward in the process.
Any other questions for the administrative team right now? We can pick up our discussion afterwards, but feeling good with the information. Okay.
Okay, yep.
Thank you all. Very helpful.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to jump around just a tiny bit again, and we are going to go to item 5C to let Dr. Wagner present to us. And she can take off.
And Mr. Mitchell.
Sorry,
yes.
Mr. Mitchell. No, the rest of you don't have to stay for the competency determination, but that's really kind of you to want to. Bye, Peter. See you later.
Wow.
You really don't have to. It's okay.
That was a test.
I'll talk about it when
It's
you
all
leave.
right, and you, yeah, Peter's out, but the rest of them are in. Yeah, no worries, no. It's okay.
They're a team. They're a team until 8:15.
That was really kind, though.
There's lemons.
Good night.
Bye, everybody.
That's funny. All right, so shifting gears, competency determination. So I'm going to talk about it from the state level, and then John will talk about the high school process, and we're asking for your approval on the policy. So, as I'm sure you know, the state passed a law this past fall that eliminated MCAS as a graduation requirement. And so the state quickly got out word through webinars and our own legal counsel and the Mass Superintendent Association about how, in particular for the class of 2025, we still need a competency determination. So it's a little confusing. There's two different things that are friends, but they're different. So there's competency determination, which is what MCAS used to prove that students mastered the standards in the content areas that MCAS covered because they passed it. And then districts also have their graduation requirements, their policy. So the state, after the law passed, came and said that districts need to quickly put in place a policy for competency determination. So what MCAS used to do, so that in particular for the class of 2025, students still have the policy by which they can graduate. Okay, so the policy before you, and John will talk a little bit about the process at the high school, is naming the classes that contain the standards that MCAS used to cover and still does cover, but that just doesn't count towards a competency determination. So the policy states students would earn their competency determination by passing, so again with the passing grade, English 9 and 10, algebra and geometry, and biology. So those are the content areas that have the standards that 9th and 10th graders take MCAS in. So down the road, the state is saying that they might add in other content areas to be put into the competency determination. But no, they said, don't wait for that. You need to pass a policy now so it's in place for the class of 2025. So John, you want to talk a little bit about the high school process? Thank you.
So to start with, Dr. Wagner and I observed a webinar that was riveting. Desi put on. It kind of gave us like some direction, but not too much direction about what to do. They wanted to have it be district determined. So I met with the other Cape Ann League principals, and we shared a lot of language. One of them had attended another session somewhere else, I can't remember where, and they had shared language from other districts, that there's some draft language about the CD, the competency determination. So we took the best of those different drafts, put it together. I brought it to the school council. The school council approved it, and now we bring it to you to see if it meets your approval.
Well, I'll say that, actually, does anybody have any questions right at the start?
Two real quick ones. Is the 60%, average of 60, is that commensurate with the MCAS requirements right now?
That's passing, and if you remember that the bar for passing the MCAS wasn't very high either, so we thought it'd be appropriate for a passing grade to be to meet the competency determination for those classes as well.
And where would this reside? Does this get updated in the handbook, policy? Where would this go? Should it be approved?
It'll be in the handbook, and also we can put it in the program of studies.
Thank you.
And eventually, the DESE has said there's going to be some sort of portal that we have to submit it into, but so far, no update on that yet.
Thank you.
I think it's important to note, and correct me if I'm wrong, but per the state website, it says that the class of 2025, since this was just implemented, students who have already earned their competency determination are not impacted by this new requirement.
So interesting, we had the law, DESE said the law would not take effect until December. So that left us still in the November retest window. So in November, we retested English and math for kids who didn't pass it yet.
Yep.
That kids who didn't pass it, or if they didn't take it yet, if they transferred in from a private school or from another state. And one kid who's taken the November retest a couple of times, the senior, passed it this time. So I mean, he also passed his English 9, 10, algebra, and geometry, but still.
Yeah.
This was like, he was the last person to earn the CD.
It was his goal, yeah.
Through the MCAS. So I thought that was great.
Yeah. The other thing, DESE is given each district sole discretion, and this includes the option to use student scores. You know what, it's on here, but anyway, high school MCAS tests as part of their local graduation requirements for the competency determination.
They said that we could do that.
Yeah. Does that make sense? Did you hear what I said? I kind of
I
fumbled
think what
that.
I'm, so I'll repeat
have
what I
to
think I
reserve.
heard you say.
Okay.
That high schools can, it's not illegal for high schools to require passing the MCAS as part of their own local graduation requirements. Is that what you asked?
I think I know. Yeah. Okay, I'm looking for it here.
I think Jenny's
Oh,
asking.
I have it here, yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Are school districts allowed to use a student's scores on high school MCAS as part of their local graduation requirements, apart from the CD?
Yes, so schools could adopt a competency determination policy that instead of saying students must pass the content classes normally covered by MCAS, so English 9 and 10, algebra and geometry and biology for us, instead of that, you could still have students have to pass MCAS.
Right.
For graduation. That's true, however, in the council we got from, I forget, Dr. Blake, if it was the Mass Superintendent Association, it was legal counsel, said that that is not a good idea.
Okay.
Because the state decided not to do that through the law, so it would be basically going against what the people voted for. And I feel very strongly that our curriculum in all our high school classes, and in particular those, is standards-based, because the teachers recently did, through their curriculum review work, rewrite their understanding by design style units. So, long way of saying, we know they're standards-based, and it makes a lot of sense, and we should do that instead of the other
Okay.
option, but that is an option.
I did think about that because I'm concerned that now that the MCAS, quote-unquote, doesn't count for kids, it only counts for schools' accountability. I worry that they'll just blow off the tests. So I did wonder if it might be a way to, if we said it counted for graduation, that
Yeah.
they might kind of be more committed to doing their best on it.
Right.
But the problem there is that the state is not guaranteeing that they're going to continue to administer the retests. So if we had kids who didn't pass the MCAS, if there weren't more opportunities for them to take the retests, then there would be a serious barrier for them to graduate.
It makes the state.
Okay. Yeah, well, that's good. Because I was curious where we decided to go with that option. Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? All right.
We need to vote on this.
So what we started talking about in the policy subcommittee is, for this to be a school committee policy, it needs like a letter assignment. So I thought we were gonna kind of view it and then next month,
Yeah, I don't
or
have,
next
I
meeting,
don't know
bake
where
it
it would
into
fit.
whatever policy it
Yeah.
goes to and approve it then.
What I would recommend is that if the school committee is okay with the policy as presented, then we could vote on it, and I can find out how it needs to be coded.
First time reviewing it. Okay, there's,
We could, you know what, it can
If
be
you
a
go
first,
with it.
yes, I take that back. It can be a first read, and then at the next school committee meeting, we'll do the final
Finalize.
approval.
There must be a code for it. I know other districts have approved it, so through MASC. Is that, it must exist.
find it,
What-
but yeah.
What Diana's talking about is any brand-new policy comes before the school committee for essentially 2 reads. There's an initial read, and then comes back at the next school committee meeting for a final vote. So this would be considered the initial read. So the policy subcommittee has seen it already and reviewed it. Now this is the first read for the entire school committee. So February 27 is when we would ask for a final
works.
vote. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah,
Place for the class of 2025,
Yeah.
that's plenty of time.
perfect, yeah, and I don't want to
We
speak for
do-
everybody, but.
Topic question to the group regarding policy. So we're clearing out a book room, and there are textbooks that are about 20 years old in the book room. And I know that there's a policy we have to get approval
right.
from the school committee. So is it, do you want the ISBN numbers or the year or the publisher? Like how much information and what information do you want?
So, yep, we need, it's actually in the policy, I think it's like the book title, the quantity, how old they are.
Policy, I didn't think I don't know if it got into the specifics. Maybe I was looking in
Okay.
the wrong place.
Do you know offhand what we would need? Because it's essentially to discard
Obsolete, okay.
There's like a list.
obsolete materials.
We can certainly look that up. 'Cause the things, type of things that we've discarded in my time here have been like a vehicle. But we can certainly make a comparison to, excess or unneeded books. And
So like
get
quantity,
back to you.
ISBN,
Probably not even
I
ISBN.
don't think you need the ISBN. I think just maybe the book title and the quantity and the year published.
What the state requires of the school committee in making that decision is things like a memo of sorts about why this is no longer a useful item for the district, and what's the approximate, resale value if we were to try to sell it, or if what would be the replacement value if we're buying the current version of the item.
books would be replaced. That's good.
So it's probably rather straightforward then.
Gotcha. And is that something I bring to a meeting, or can I just suspend it? I send it to you guys in a,
No, we'd have to come to a meeting, so send it to Laura or myself, and we'll make sure it's on an agenda.
If you need to come, I mean, it's not going to be, I can imagine it's going to be controversial.
Is it for DECA? Is it the DECA closet or no? No, okay.
I'm trying to find.
You could do a reading. You could come and read from one of the passages.
one of the textbook series is Latin, which we don't have.
I'm not finding it in the manual.
Right, great, thank you. for
Thank you.
that.
Thanks.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
Right. Run.
All right, so getting reoriented here, we're gonna jump back up to 5A and B. Charlie, I believe you're presenting on both of those?
Yes.
A and
So
B.
I am presenting as president of Model UN for the high school for our overnight field trip presentation for Model UN. As many of you know, every year the high school Model UN club goes to Boston to spend Friday, Saturday, and half of Sunday, and the second half of Friday in Boston. We compete against schools nationwide and occasionally worldwide. There's been international schools before. And we are asking to allow this field trip to go through so that we can book our hotel rooms and we can get on the road with going to Model UN. If you have any questions, let me know, but I feel like most of you understand what it's about. I know it's presented every year for the past few years now. We have less kids than last year, and so we have one less chaperone. And we don't have the final number of students yet, so what you're seeing on the page is actually the maximum number of students. But that weekend coincides with a robotics tournament, and so some students will not be spending overnight and may not go at all. So that's why we don't have a definite number of students, but that is the maximum that would be eligible to go. But I have already heard from some that they will not be going.
I just had two quick questions on this. I noticed on Mr. Caulfield's application or document, leaving school at 11:30 on Friday, but then the itinerary looks like you don't need to be at your hotel till 4, so I didn't know if,
Yes,
like,
so that
why
is the
it takes 4.5
check-in time
hours?
for the hotel. So we leave the school 11:30.
Yep.
We get into Boston, we drop our bags off at the hotel, and then it's been tradition where we take a walking trip on the Freedom Trail throughout Boston. So we go around, we start at Faneuil Hall, like we drop off our bags, the buses take us to Faneuil Hall, we get dropped off, and we walk from Faneuil Hall back to our hotel, which is right next to the public library, and so we kind of do that whole historic walk. We go down Newbury Street, we go through the Boston Public Gardens and Boston Common. We see the State House, we see memorials, we see the old cemetery where there's a lot of famous Bostonians buried. And so it's a history walk as you go there, and then by the time we get back there, it'll be 4 o'clock We can check into
It's
our
all
hotel.
coming back to me now. Okay,
Yeah.
that sounds fun. Second thing, I just saw on the itinerary that it's from like 8 to 10 at night. There's like no dinner. What are there rules around like how far you can go from the hotel? You can't just like wander around the
Yes.
city for 2 hours?
So each high school does it differently. We have always done it where you cannot leave like the perimeter, so there's streets, whatever. So you cannot go further than Newbury Street,
Okay.
and you cannot go further than the street that is parallel to the hotel. The hotel is luckily connected to the mall,
Yeah.
which is great for kids to get food. But also attendance is taken before you leave for dinner and right when you get back for dinner, at least in your committees. And if you're missing, you get notified. You can't travel by yourself. You'd be traveling with a group of 2 or 3. And then there's room checks at night to make sure everybody's back. But again, attendance is taken once you get back into the hotel. We have dinner on Friday as a group, as a whole Model UN, and then you're on your own for dinner on Saturday night. And yeah.
And then with the new cell phone ban, will you have cell phones or
When they
not?
are dismissed for the field trip, I believe they'll pick up their cell phones, so we can work
I'm just
out
curious, because
either.
if you're unsupervised in the city, I kind of want
No,
you to
yeah,
have a cell
you get a cell phone.
Yes, they will.
They will have their cell phones.
That's
So we'll
never
probably
come
put
up
them in the
before,
front
has it?
office, and then as the kids are leaving, they'll get their cell phones. We all have a group chat on a social media platform. I think it's called GroupMe or something, Remind. But basically, all the students are a part of that, and that way we can text instructions. This is when we're going to leave, like everybody be at the lobby at this time or whatever, or opening ceremonies are then. And yeah.
Thank you.
What's the funding source?
The students pay for it themselves. We wrote a grant to Twig this year to try to get some money for it, but that did not pass, unfortunately. And so the prices did go up. Last year, it was $210. This year, it's $250, and we're really, really squeezing that because, unsurprisingly, hotel rooms have gone up, food has gone up, and bus transportation has gone up. So, we're right at the cusp of breaking even on that. Yeah.
Does the cost for chaperones?
That includes the cost for the chaperone's room, both chaperones' rooms, yeah.
Chaperone's room singular?
Chaperone rooms, plural.
Rooms. Well, I ask because on the form, there's 50 students in the group. I don't know if 50 students would be going, but you need 5 chaperones for that, so.
I think you got up.
Yeah, he thinks
Said that's the max number
That's
that
the
can
max
go,
number that
but they
can
have a
technically
smaller
go,
group.
Was it there?
but
Okay.
it'll be a much smaller group. I've already heard from
Oh,
some
okay.
students. It's a conflict weekend with robotics, and I think MICA too, which always happens. These are just the number of students who are in the Model UN club,
are able to.
and that's not even the whole number who've registered to go for Eagle Monk.
Okay.
That's just, like, theoretically speaking, if they registered right now and didn't want to do robotics or MICA, which they don't, that's how many could go. Right now, we have 2 chaperones signed up, David Wood and Mr. Caulfield. In the past, we had 3 chaperones, but we had 16 more kids last year than we do this year. So, yeah.
So depending on how many kids go, if you need an additional chaperone to be in ratio, those fee, how will those fees be covered?
I don't know if we will need an additional chaperone with the kids who are going. Again, last year we had 3 chaperones for more kids. Like the chaperones aren't watching the kids; they're in basically school, like all day. Like there's a staff in that room. There's 2 adults in that room who watch them. It's Model UN. There's check-in, check-out. There's curfews. There's morning check. There's night check. They're pretty well watched. I've been told by the chaperones it's kind of boring because they don't do anything. So we've never had the 10-to-1 ratio before, just because there are other adults at that event who are watching the kids, if that makes sense. There are adults there.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we couldn't afford to go if we had to fund 10 full chaperones, basically. In the past, again, we only had 3 chaperones last year.
I'll address that with Mr. Caulfield and the administration.
I see that this says there's no scholarship available. That's tough, right?
Yeah, it's,
Yes, if
yeah.
Someone who's qualified to go, I don't know if there's a certain criteria. This is just, overall with field trips. I know a lot of them do have scholarships available, but I wonder if that's something that we can think about requiring that there's one scholarship available per each field trip or something, because it's sad if somebody could go, but they couldn't afford
Yeah,
it.
and we've had cases of that. It costs $90 to register with Boston College Eagle Monk, and then it's $250 for the hotel room. But in order to qualify for that, you have to attend the Georgetown Multi-Event Conference, which is $30. So you're looking at, almost $400 to go
Yeah.
for this event.
Even if it was subsidized or something.
Yeah, I don't know how
Just,
we'd get the
again,
money for that.
overall general thing for field trips.
I think administrators might make it happen if it needs to happen in certain cases. Is that fair to say?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I think there's,
For scholarships for kids, oh, absolutely,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, like, there's a high school activities fund, and like, there are some,
Oh, okay,
Parents
I'm
can
not,
appeal to the
I don't know if there's
principal.
like a policy around it, but I think,
right.
I think administrators know, which families might,
Yeah.
need some assistance
So I
and
guess the
kind of make it
question is, how
happen.
do those families know, or how would students know that that's available to them? Because
Right.
if you're saying in the past this is an issue, then perhaps
Well,
people
it's,
didn't.
in the past, it's been an issue for students who don't qualify for free and reduced lunch, where usually in the past, kids who've qualified for free and reduced lunch, even though lunch is free now, people who qualify for that do get help on field trips. But for your average family who does not qualify for financial assistance, the $400 is still expensive, because you also buy a suit, you have to wear a suit, you have to have nice shoes, have to have a collared shirt and tie. So that's expensive. And a lot of kids don't qualify to receive that help. And yeah, that was the hope with the TWIG grant this year, but again, that didn't pass, and there wasn't any other grants we could apply for in time to get money to help pay for the trip.
Entertain a motion.
I would like to have the names of the chaperones included, just as TBD right now. Also because we don't know the number.
I think, so it's Mr. Caulfield for sure.
And Mr. Wood for sure. That's another
It's
chaperone.
pretty
for sure.
standard to not have them listed necessarily exactly who.
No, usually the ratio is listed and,
Yeah.
or, I mean, some of the other overnight field trips we have had, they do put the full list of chaperones on there.
So, what is the risk of waiting till the 27th?
I do not know.
Okay, not huge.
We're talking April 4th through 6th.
I have no idea. Checks
When
are,
would you know the total number of students that are going to be able to go?
right now, we have, let me pull up the number of students who have paid right now.
Even if we didn't have the specific names, but we could specify, we intend to send 3 chaperones.
So far, there have been 40 students have paid to go, and we are waiting on about 4 more who might be interested in going.
You do need 5 chaperones then.
Last year, we had more students, and we only had 3 chaperones. So I don't know. And the year before that, we only had 2
Talking,
chaperones. and
Charlie, you're
more.
throwing everybody under the bus.
I'm just saying, like in the past, like it wouldn't be,
Yeah.
right, it wouldn't be financially possible to do it if we had to have the full chaperone amount. And in the past, for whatever reason, school committee has approved this trip without the full required number of chaperones. And that has been the case for all 4 years I've been in high school. And that is because,
Let's not
right, I
continue
mean,
to bring that up.
okay.
For this year, I would expect that there's a chaperone for every 10 kids, as is the policy.
Mhm.
Right, am I understanding that correctly? Okay. If there's a financial aspect to that, let us help solve that.
Yeah.
But we would expect, I would request that there is the right number, the
appropriate
appropriate number of chaperones.
So there will definitely be a financial aspect for that.
Okay.
And so how should I best approach that?
What would if you can tell us what the dollar amount is, kind of to Kate's point, that's something that we can help to solve for. And that doesn't have to be like right now in the moment, you could bring that back.
It'd be about $2,500 additional cost.
For another chaperone?
for the
five
five chaperones.
Oh, for the 5, okay.
Well, there's already, okay.
There's 2 chaperones, so in order to match the ratio, it'd be an extra $2,500 for the cost. Because they each get their own hotel room.
Okay. So it sounds like we will continue this on February 27th.
Okay, and where should I reach out for financial assistance as an option?
What's the right vehicle, yeah,
Is it
what's the right
district-wide,
forum
or
for
is
us
that
to
at the
discuss
school?
that?
I would go through Mr. Caulfield, the faculty member,
Okay.
and the administration,
Okay,
Okay.
be the line I would suggest.
okay. I mean,
So
when
I
people
think-
are supportive of the trip,
Exactly.
we want to
Oh,
make sure
yeah.
the chaperones and the
Right.
costs are in place. so we
I don't
can-
know if the trip will run, basically, now.
Well, I mean, I think we're telling you we're supportive.
Right,
and
I just-
we're,
Yeah.
we could give feedback to Mr. Crowfield that we're concerned that we just need to have enough chaperones to satisfy our policy, and we'll do our best to work to make it happen so that the trip still runs.
Yeah.
That sounds good.
Outside of the financial piece of it, finding 5 people total, is that something that's relatively easy to do?
No.
No, okay.
Now that you said it was boring.
I mean,
It was boring,
gotten 2 years ago.
and last year we really struggled to get 3
Look
chaperones.
to parents.
Yeah, I'll go, Charlie.
Yeah.
I got you.
Are parents allowed to go?
Weekend in Boston,
I-
if we're Corey.
You
Those-
go,
well,
you got
yeah,
2
those-
right there.
If parents are
Parents can be
worried,
chaperones.
Can they
they
be
can go,
chaperones? Okay.
and faculty actually gets paid to go.
These faculty were not being paid to go.
I'm sorry?
They were not being paid to go.
The faculty members have to be paid to go.
Oh, okay. That was not part of the cost in that.
Yeah, then let's get that included as well.
Okay.
Let's
Okay, so
move
let's follow up
on.
with Mr. Caulfield with the intention of making sure that we can get everything sorted so that everybody can go. Okay.
And the rain garden.
So I am also an officer of the environmental club at the high school. Wearing a different hat now. And the environmental club has in the past done a garden dinner, which some of you might have been to, and the front garden. And that is a lot of logistic work, and it's very expensive. And this year we want to try something different, which is to make a rain garden in front of the PAC over there, right outside those doors. There's a path that goes around for handicap access, and in between that there is some dirt, and it's kind of been eroded away. And so the idea would be to plant native plants, which will help keep the land from eroding. So it helps make the school look prettier, and it helps prevent future damage. And in the slideshow, you can see some examples of what rain gardens would look like. Obviously, we would not be doing the ones with ponds or lakes, but you could expect to see some rocks to help hold in the soil, some native grasses and plants, which would help bring back some insects and butterflies and nice birds, potentially. And so that is, we are asking for the school committee to grant us permission to garden, essentially that land right there. We would need to know where the light pole, where the wires are for that, because obviously we don't want to be messing with anything near that. But yeah, that's the plan for the rain garden. We don't have plants picked out yet, but we're going to try to make sure that they're all native plants.
Who is your advisor for the environmental club?
Lori LaFrance. Yeah.
So Charlie brought this idea to me, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago, something like that. I think it's a great use of the space out there. I think it'll make that area look a whole lot nicer than it does. My only concern, and the only thing that I had said to Charlie was during the winter months, we're putting a lot of rock salt and things like that, and I just worry about the plantings, but it sounds like what they plan on using would be hardy enough to withstand any of that.
Yeah, the plants we're going to choose would be native to the North Shore, so they'd be able to withstand the cold, and we'll look into plants that can withstand some level of salinity. Yeah.
You could do burlap coverings and stuff too, if you need
Yeah.
to, like in the, yeah.
And again, the green team will take care of it, just like we do the garden in front of the school. And we're not going to have like crazy tall grasses or anything that need to be cut back. We'd have small bushes and things that would not need a lot of extra work on the school to maintain.
I have a question about how many people are in the club? How many students currently?
A lot. I don't know the exact number. It's a good amount. It fluctuates. We meet every other Thursday, so it kind of varies depending on what's happening.
And like a good
Right there.
mix of freshmen through seniors, or?
Good mix of freshmen through seniors.
Just looking at that upkeep bullet there? you know?
Yes, it is probably one of the bigger clubs in the high school. We also work with the middle school a lot for the club, and I've talked to Mr. Ginolfi, and also totally blanking on the name of the middle school advisor for the green team there, but we've worked with them in the past for the
Colby?
Ms. Colby. Yep, we've worked with them for the garden in the front, and she said she'd also be willing to help with the garden that would be here.
I bet you could get some good support too from the elementary school club, like the Green Team Club.
Yeah,
to
we
bring
would love to do
it'd be
that.
fun to have the little younger kids come up and help or something. I don't know, not all the time, but maybe as like
We
a
have
one-off.
some money to pay for it, and we're also going to be presenting at Awesome Ipswich, hopefully, in order to request a grant from them.
Nice, yeah.
I think it'd be nice to have some sort of plaque or like education piece that was like, this is a rain garden and it
That's what
serves
we're
this purpose
presenting to
and-
Awesome Ipswich with,
Yeah.
would be the funding of a plaque and materials.
Okay.
So because this is making changes to the physical plant of the school campus, it would need to be approved by the school committee. That's why it's coming to you folks.
Both high school and middle school principals have okayed the project. So
I have a question about the drainage. Like, are you gonna, and I don't know how much drainage there is there, but are you gonna consult with the landscape or anything just to make sure things are getting diverted and we're not?
yeah, so it's not going to be, so some of the rain gardens is like it kind of like tries to hold in the water. We're going to try to hold in the soil and make sure the water goes back into the ground instead of running on top of the ground and taking off the topsoil. So the idea is we kind of make it like an embankment of plants in nature to kind of hold in, retain the water instead of it flowing down and eroding the steps and the ground that's already there.
Okay. Yes, and again, I don't know how much water we're talking about. My question is like, are we putting ourselves at risk of having any like backflow in a way that we wouldn't want water to go? Like, I guess, how are you coming
That's
to
a
the
good-
conclusion of how
That's a
to
good
do
point.
this?
We're working with the garden club in Ipswich, and
Okay.
so I hope they know a lot. We're also working with Corliss to
Oh, okay.
make plant donations, so I'm sure they could help with that. We haven't done a plan yet. We're just trying to get approval, and then we'll look at the site and work with them to see what we can build within our budget. if it
Okay.
works.
Yeah. That sounds good. To keep in mind just how water flows. Great. And I love it because it's perfectly in line with the new district sustainability policy. So excellent.
I
Is
just have
there-
a couple, are you, sorry.
Do you have questions? Are you ready for a motion?
Oh, I just have a suggestion. I know that there've been other things, I'm not sure where, but there's always like a great idea to have, something developed. And, sometimes the maintenance, kind of lapses a little bit. So I encourage you to have a set schedule on and who's going to do it. So I don't know if it's every month, that person to go and look to see what has to be done, just so it's upkept. And I know it says there's little to no, but I think for both areas, I think it's good to have a schedule, just so it's on a person or two or something like that, to go out and clean up anything that needs to be done, because otherwise it can be, it can fall off the radar.
Yeah. So we have kind of sporadic and also semi-annual, like fall and spring, where we send out a message to the entire club, and we'll have 20 or 30 high schoolers plus some middle schoolers that will help winterize the garden beds. And in the spring, we'll also help plant in the garden beds and mulch the garden beds. And so we have a strong group of kids to help with the garden in front. And it's actually gone to the point where we kind of go through it too fast. So we finish it all before, like we were supposed to. And so the idea of this would be, there's definitely kids who can help, and we require less upkeep than the garden out front. And so we can definitely, the worries of upkeep are not huge. Like, we can definitely upkeep the garden.
All right, great. So is there a motion?
Motion to approve the rain garden in the, outside the pack. Not sure how to set. Good enough? Yeah.
Great. Moved by Jenny, second by Haley. Further discussion? All in favor? Motion passes right, jumping down, we are now at the superintendent's administrative report.
That already?
Already.
It's actually been a month since our last regular school committee. The focus over this past month, obviously, has been the development and the presentation of the budget last week, and then some follow-up questions this evening. I've had a lot of meetings with the principals and the administrative team to formulate the budget that was put together. As I mentioned earlier this evening, there's still some moving pieces that we need to go back and look at and sort through. I think this is a very difficult budget to put together, not only for this coming fiscal year, but looking out the next couple of fiscal years and looking at what funding sources we have available, meaning reserve funds, et cetera. So we've still got a lot of work to do around the budget before anything is ready to be finalized. I participated in the CREST Collaborative Personnel and Policy Committee meeting. We had to review several policies ahead of their meeting. They were looking at a work-from-home policy for some of they don't have a policy at all around administrators working from home, so they wanted to pilot something, so we talked about that. They were also struggling with parental leave and paid time off for their staff, so we worked through some of those issues with them. And then the full committee meeting for the CREST board was last week, where those draft policies were approved. Over the course of the last month, I've had to deal with several personnel issues in the district. One is ongoing. I also met with Brad, our facilities director, to review some of the ongoing staffing concerns that he has, working through schedules and maintenance requests and things like that. The North Shore Superintendent's Roundtable met with District Attorney Paul Tucker and Dawn Gigante Masterson. Their presentation was around the different changes that are happening in the juvenile justice system. We had the rest of that meeting was around the competency determination policies that we talked about earlier tonight with Tracy and John, but we talked to superintendents just about what we were doing in our different districts. We had I did a webinar on immigration law and protecting our students' rights, and then we sent out information to families and staff that was very well received by both. Ipswich Athletic Advisory Committee had a meeting in January. We talked about a town-wide sports fair that they're going to be having in March to coincide with the I believe it's a jump rope program that they have here at the high school.
Jump rope contest?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I think we're going to be doing the athletics fair, townwide sports fair, I should say, to coincide with that. So there'll be more information coming out on that. We reviewed all the sports programs, contact lists. We talked about the field, the middle high school softball field project, and just got an update on that in terms of the fencing work that's being done. And then they talked a little bit about the Jack Welch Stadium, bathroom and concession stand and locker room project, and where they are in terms of getting pricing and putting in looking to do a sewer line and water line this summer for that project. Budget Subcommittee met twice during the last month. FEFI's working group, policy subcommittees, and the communications subcommittees also met. I ended up taking a CPR class that was offered in district with about 35 other staff members from across the district. We did the practical piece after school one day Jen Reed and Paula Butt set that up for the district. Tom Gallagher and I met for our monthly meeting and also to deal with some athletic issues involving fan behavior at games. It seems to be a widespread issue through the Cape Ann League where there's a lot of concern around fan behavior and taunting players and things like that. And we had a pretty significant issue within the district that we had to deal with. IEF held its monthly meeting earlier in the month. I was not able to make that due to a family commitment. I wasn't sure if Matt was able to go, so we'll have to follow up on that. The North Shore Education Consortium had its monthly meeting to review the draft of their annual budget. The DEI team met last week. The main topic of discussion was the immigration policies and protecting our students and just how our students and staff were feeling about all of what's been going on. Earlier this week, I participated in an interview with an organization that's working with the town on a needs assessment for the eventual use of the opioid funds that'll be coming into the town. I did a webinar, actually Tom and I both did a webinar with Beacon Transportation regarding a new platform that they're launching for administrators and perhaps eventually parents, just around bus tracking and uploading schedules and information to their portals directly. So we're going to continue to explore that. And tomorrow I meet with the tech director to review his plan for next week. As you know, he uses the school vacation weeks to upgrade all of our systems, to back things up, perform any kind of routine maintenance, so he's able to essentially take all of our systems down. And then he does Friday afternoon of every break, he takes down the entire system and then does some upgrades and backups, and then we have everything up and running again when school starts again. So I'll hear all about that tomorrow. I know he has a whole spreadsheet prepared of what's going to be updated during this break. I'll also be meeting with Brad Friday morning to talk about what the plans are for the facilities department over vacation week, because again, we try to get bigger projects done. There isn't anything like the flooring project or anything happening over February break. It's just more routine maintenance and cleaning that'll get done. So that's it.
Dr. Blake?
I just have a quick question. Since you brought up sports,
Yep.
I was wondering if you could talk about or tell us about why the girls' junior varsity program, was that? No? Was that?
No,
Is there a
yeah, no,
junior
so
varsity?
I wasn't prepared to answer that question,
sorry,
but
no,
I'll
you
give it
just-
I'll get, so it was due to the numbers, and so initially they didn't schedule any JV games, and I think since then they've had, I want to say 4, maybe 5 JV games that were played.
Oh, okay, so
So
we
there
do
is-
have a
so there is
junior
a-
varsity this year?
Oh.
Girls' junior varsity? Oh, okay, sorry, I misunderstood. Okay.
That they're fielding a team, like they're fully fielding a junior varsity team now?
I'm
Not
not sure
exactly.
how many girls are involved.
That
Yeah.
they've been able to play some
Yes,
games,
yes.
whatever that
Yep.
looks like. Interesting.
It wasn't originally scheduled. They went back and scheduled games.
Okay.
Subcommittee, working group, and liaison reports. So we're going to hear from budget. I think budget can kind of chime in when we go through the budget discussion again. Policy, FEs, we're going to hear from, sounds like elementary group is going to meet, has not yet met. Are there any other big reports?
Yes.
Yes?
Well, climate resiliency, I could give a quick update on, and then I don't know if we want to talk about strategic planning
Yes, I was going to bring, so Carl Nyland, Chair of the Strategic Planning Committee, had reached out, kind of wanting to engage the school committee in the plan. When I was talking with him, there were more questions than answers, so I would like to propose like a one-off working group. I was thinking it could be composed of me as chair, Kate as the liaison to that group, Sasha as chair of budget subcommittee, perhaps to meet with Carl to kind of hash out a couple details, then come back to this group for a discussion, and then hopefully be able to engage fully in that conversation with the strategic planning committee and the tri-boards and everything. So I guess I'm just looking for a general acknowledgement and approval of that.
So 3 of you meet with them.
Yeah, with Carl, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think I missed the strategic planning committee meeting last week because I was only going to make 40 minutes of it before I had to dash here for this meeting. And I just didn't make it in time. So I missed their discussion, but the follow-up after it was they really are encouraging school committee to get more involved in the strategic plan and giving them feedback. And they wanted us to sort of rank the 8 bigger projects and to give them feedback. So I think it led to a conversation, and then I think the best is just to have a meeting and sort of understand what they want more.
Yeah.
And then hopefully bring it back. If we meet on the 4th, we could bring it back to this committee on the 6th, if we meet on the 6th, March 6th. So,
Yeah, we're trying to.
and I don't know, yeah, because I missed their meeting, I'm not sure of the exact timeline. I think they're hoping to put something in the FinCom booklet about the strategic plan before town meeting, but I don't know the timeline of that. But I would imagine early March should be fine. We haven't voted on budgets yet.
Right. And we discussed like perhaps our discussions today during our budget cycle will potentially impact the bigger picture, so. All right, cool. So
Oh, sorry, one other thing from strategic planning that I wasn't sure about. They also brought up the cost that they have in their model for the new elementary building project, and thought, based on the little bit of research they did into the Hamilton Wenham project, which is currently at $142 million, are we low with our $103 million, I think, right now? So we were going to sort of look into that a little bit more and try to give potentially more firmed up.
Hamilton Wenham's at 3 schools.
745-ish students, though, I think it's 1 through 5.
It's a data point.
Data point, right.
in the
So I think
future, but-
they just saw that. They haven't dug into the numbers a lot.
You say we're going to look into it, is we strategic planning?
No,
Oh, who's we?
I don't know.
We
That's
meet with Carl.
that's what I'm
and-
asking. I think,
We haven't put forth projections at any point. We looked historically, Hamilton Wenham hasn't broken ground, so it's helpful information. I would put it back to strategic planning based on how they got to the, I think it was a 102 number, and how
Right.
might this information factor into that? But we haven't put forward recommendations.
I
I
think-
don't know that we
well, we've
should at this
confirmed
point.
their recommendation. Most of the numbers in the strategic plan come from department heads. Their strategic plan is not making up numbers for projects. They're getting numbers from department heads. So I think they're looking for a number from us that will accurately reflect a potential cost of a new building. And they're not saying 103 is wrong. They're just saying, hey, we saw Hamilton Wenham's at 142. Are we sure, do we want to stick with 103 or not? So I think we have to do a little bit of due diligence to come up with a realistic.
And Hamilton Wenham's in feasibility, right?
They're beyond feasibility.
Oh, yeah.
They're in schematic design, I believe.
Voting
Oh,
on
yeah.
their whole project.
So they have,
Yeah.
I was looking on their building website, so they have a model of, I don't know if it's a final number, but it's a lot more.
Do you want to add it to the agenda if we need, as you're suggesting one-off working group? Do you want to add it to the agenda for that? Would that work? Or are you asking to bring it to elementary subcommittee, or what are your thoughts?
I don't know.
What's your-
I don't know.
I think we can talk about, I think we could talk about it at the strategic planning working group that we just created. Just how to go about that and what type of
Okay.
inputs they're looking for.
Okay.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. High school representative.
Oh, but sorry, don't we
Just
have
like
more?
planners
I
Is
think
there
we have
more?
other, we don't have other, we have FEPIs, we have other
Yeah,
subcommittees.
because that's an agenda item.
Oh, it is, okay, sorry.
I want to start my student report by saying that it is not a reflection of the school committee, but rather myself and fellow concerned students. Tonight, I want to talk about the potential loss of an English teacher, which was presented in the recent budget. I don't want to make it sound like I'm going off the rails here. I know it's not an easy conversation, but it is one that I think must be brought up. English is one of the core subjects which our high school requires 4 years of. It is perhaps one of the most important subjects students are taught in school. While math may not be used in day-to-day life, reading and writing are vital in every class, from scientific reports to geometric proofs. Reading and writing is also vital in day-to-day life, and is the one life skill students are most likely to take away from high school. Nationwide, we are seeing a decline in writing quality from high school graduates and a decline in reading ability. The New York Times wrote just last October that college professors nationwide are reporting steep declines in students' ability to read on their own. New Massachusetts frameworks are requiring testing for dyslexia in elementary schools. More testing will undoubtedly lead to more students being identified as having dyslexia and other learning difficulties. As someone who has dyslexia and dysgraphia, I can personally attest that small classes are essential in learning English when you have a disability. If I had not had my freshman class in 9th grade be small, I would definitely not have been able to go on to the classes I am today. My sophomore year in English consisted of over 20 students, and that was the hardest English class I've ever taken, even harder than AP Language Arts and AP Literature. The average class size presented is, in my opinion, a misleading number, which can be the result of several large classes combined with very, very small classes. If the loss of this position were alone, that would be easier to understand. However, the loss of this position coincides with the hiring of a theater and dance teacher. To most outside observers, this looks like a cut in English in order to fund a theater position. I have more understanding of that, but as the town reads the budget, I have the feeling that that is what's going to come across. I have enormous respect for our school's art department, but I do not think that our art should come at the cost of core subjects. To my knowledge, I do not know many students who are excited about taking a theater or dance class, and I wonder what the average classes of those sizes would be. It was just a few years ago when the school removed its last theater position, which was not a 1.0 position, and did not have as many classes to offer, and those classes were still relatively small. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tom, do you want to give a quick finance?
Can we
Oh, do you have a
discuss
question?
that a little bit, or no?
Yeah,
We
that's
just-
fine.
I mean, I want to just, I'm not sure we're going to be offering substantially fewer English classes. And from what we just heard from the administrator, it seems like the class size most likely might go up 1.5 students and still be, for the most part, well under 20 students for most classes. So I just want to make
Again,
that
from
point
my
clear.
perspective, I don't think it's the loss of the classes. I think it's the loss of the different class spots. So instead of having 2 English 9 classes or 2 senior journalism classes, you're going to have 1 class, which is going to have a significant number of people. And the average class size is brought down by the higher level classes. So AP Seminar this year has 4 kids, and so that's going to skew the numbers of the average class size by quite a bit. So the higher level classes, your AP classes, are going to be much smaller than your general honor CP2 classes, and those are the students that need the smaller help more than the advanced students would. And so what I worry is that you're going to have very large classes where teachers can't meet one-on-one individually with a student, which is essential in English writing and reading, and I worry that that is going to harm English learning in the school. We've already seen that our MCAS scores for English dropped, and that might just be 1-year thing, and that's fine, but our English MCAS scores are not as high as our science and math MCAS scores in terms of meets expectations. And I think that as a school, we should encourage our core classes more than our theater and arts. I have huge respect for our theater and arts programs, and I think we are one of the best, but I think we should really be focusing on English in general. I think that students don't know how to write as well as they used to, and that's just my opinion on that, but the MCAS scores for grade 10 in English language arts for 2021, 2022, 2023, and 2024 were partially meeting expectations, weren't great. They were all higher than the mathematics partially meeting expectations. So it's on the Mass website. So for 2022, 21 kids met partially met expectations. 2023, 34 partially met expectations. 2024, 33 partially met expectations. If you go to the mathematics side, it's roughly the same number, but they have less kids who are partially meeting expectations by a handful. And I just think that there's more math teachers. I'm not saying there's a causation with more teachers and higher MCAS scores, but I think there's definitely a correlation with more teachers in a subject area and the better they perform in classes. I think it's also important to note that a lot of the English teachers we have are also certified to teach history. And so if there was a large number of history classes, they might not be able to run as many English classes. I'm not really sure on that, but I don't think there's a lot of strictly English-focused teachers as much as there should be.
Any other questions or comments for Charlie?
I do think we have to be careful about talking about class size averages.
Yeah.
And we had a budget subcommittee prior to this, and in this nice budget packet, we even said, we have ratios of teacher to student in the Ipswich district that are much like private schools because they're so low. And I think you just have to be careful about comparing across the board. But yes, there are AP classes that have 4 and 8 students in them, but we have extremely low class sizes right now, and
For some classes, again, the
Let's-
general large classes, I have never seen a English 9 honors class, be super, super small. They've always been larger than the average, and that's, again, because the higher classes are smaller, and they do skew the numbers downwards. It's just how it is. So your general classes are going to be bigger than your higher level classes.
But they're still well within our policy class size expectations, which we have in our policies.
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Tom, finance report.
Thank you. Good evening. If I could start with the FY25 sort of reports. In your packet, in your folder rather, are the 2 monthly documents. Call your attention to first the year-to-date budget report, and just like to highlight a couple points there for your review. Starting on page 1 and then going over to page 2, under building and grounds for the Doyon and building and grounds for Winthrop. I just wanted to call out to members or anyone in the community, under the category for electricity, we are showing some negative balances there. That is anticipated, in that we had increased our use of both EDP funds and school food service funds to offset the known cost increases for electricity in FY25. So we have expended, as you see there, we have already expended the appropriated budget amount, and we are running effectively, a deficit. We're not running a deficit, of course, against the entire budget, which is why I haven't, offset those costs yet. It would not be my practice, unless the committee sought to discuss otherwise, but it would not be my practice to offset those costs into revolving funds until we begin to close the year in the fourth quarter. We really effectively want to take all but only what we need. So if you're going to see in both Doyon Building for electricity and Winthrop Building for electricity, a $32,000 deficit in Doyon and a $37,000 deficit in Winthrop, again, for the line for electricity. So I just wanted to call that out in case you're looking at the first couple of pages and say, oh, on the first 2 pages, there are deficit figures. So I just wanted to make that point. The other thing to call to your attention is on page 23, and this will certainly be a talking point moving forward for a variety of reasons. On page 23, under the special education department, the beginning of the section at the top of the page, you see a rather hefty deficit for the 4th line from the bottom. Under tuitions, you see a deficit of $1,045,320. That effectively is the same answer to the prior point that I made with regard to electricity costs at the 2 elementary schools. We are required to encumber all of the known costs for special education out-of-district placements. We're obviously the students that the Ipswich students that are participating in these out-of-district placements, we need to enter into contracts with those schools, and we need to provide the monthly tuition. What here is not offset yet are the 2 external sources that we will be hitting as we close fiscal '25, that being the circuit breaker fund and the special education stabilization fund. Again, I would not be my practice to charge into those funds until we know what our known expenses are, especially since we are running we still have 40% of the budget left here in the 8th month of the year. So I just wanted to call those things out. Those are sort of, one-offs, but those are examples. Those are clear representative examples of things that we are charging into our revolving or stabilization funds that we haven't done yet. As I sort of alluded to a second ago, where the rest of the budget is running as anticipated, as planned. We're in a very good, stead for fiscal '25 here at the 8-month mark. About 40% of the budget are remaining as we're hitting this point. So the next thing, certainly happy to. Yeah, please. Sorry.
On page 6, there's a line item for purchasing services, also with a large negative budget, 81,000 encumbered, negative 103 available. What is that for? 3rd line item from the bottom on page 6, or 4th line item?
Let me just. So this is the Doyon School. Okay, that is the cost of how we are paying for the mentor, for the person serving effectively as the assistant principal role. That's a contracted service. That individual who works for the district every day is not an employee of ours, so it's not under salary. It would be under contracted services. Yep.
And is that position staying through the rest of the year, and we're hiring an assistant principal for next year?
I'm sorry?
We're hiring an assistant
principal for next year.
For next
Yep.
year.
Thank you, Tom.
Yep.
And that position is needed throughout the school year. Yes. Checking.
So on that point, just for the sake of tying the story out, if you go to the first line under principal's office, you're going to see what was budgeted there for $235,000 was 2 positions. And you see that obviously we're only paying one of those positions through the salary line. So there's, at this point, at the 60% mark, there's $164,000 surplus. When we close the budget, that will be offset we'll take the money needed for the contracted service and so forth, so. Yep.
Where was that line item, so where it's listed for the, under the principals?
On page 6, section 52.
Thanks.
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
Sure. Next, call your attention to the monthly spreadsheet on the balances, end-of-month balances and revolving gift and stabilization accounts. Continue to be able to report that they're healthy balances on the accounts as we are, working through the year. Those that have, revenue throughout the month are offset with expenses, obviously, but these funds are operating on target and as anticipated. You'll see, for example, hearkening back to my out-of-district tuition example, account R11, the circuit breaker account, has a balance of $1.2 million. It's our intention, this year to charge about $320,000, into that. We have not, done that yet, but certainly as we close the year, we will. Any questions on fiscal '25? Certainly, if there are any, don't hesitate to give a buzz or shoot me an email or that. Can I take a minute to talk about fiscal '26? Is that, or is that later? Or is that,
I
are
was
we all
gonna
done?
Wishful thinking.
I was gonna, see if anybody wanted to take a, 5-minute break
Oh,
before
sure.
we jumped back in. Sort of a little bit more ahead of us.
Never a bad idea. Let's do it.
Okay, let's do it. We'll come back in about 5
Okay.
minutes.
All right.
Power nap?
So long. Well, we Back at 9:32. And we are going to discuss the FY26 budget. And I was thinking that the budget subcommittee, as you just met, you could kind of take us through what you talked about, and then we can go from there.
Yeah, sure. So Budget Subcommittee met earlier this evening. What we talked about was getting a better understanding of the long-term tax impact to residents over the next 10 years. So using current projections and the FY26 budget to say, what in general does that look like if we go out to FY36? So over the course of the next 10 years. Two main reasons. One, just in general, what does it look like for our cost? Maybe three. Second, what might that mean for overrides? And then third, trying to be mindful that we have a building project coming up that we will be asking taxpayers for money in the coming years. The current override tax calculator that was last year and as you've seen this year assumes a 4.9% increase in our budget year over year. This is our baseline scenario, sort of our starting point. That would require multiple large overrides over the next 10 years. For reference, the last override was 1.8 million. We generally try to space those about every 5 years, or that's the last few were every 5 years. At the current rate, I'm worried, or it looks like it would be more frequent and at a higher dollar amount. Something that we started to discuss and we will need to continue in the future, that we're not comfortable with that level of spend overall in general and the burden that that would put on taxpayers. Adding on top of that, the cost of a new school building. We put together, or we discussed two alternative scenarios. One was to keep the overall difference in the budget versus revenue equal year over year. So essentially, each year we're drawing the same amount from our override or from our stabilization fund. That would mean that it would have an impact to the services in all of the schools, the level of services in all of the schools, but bring down the tax burden and bring it to a much more moderate amount for the overrides, and only need probably 2 overrides over the course of the next 10 years. Much more in line with where we want to be. The other scenario, the second scenario that we looked at, was to get the level of spend, our budget, to be equal to the revenue from the town 10 years from now. So that 10 years from now, we would not need to draw from an override or stabilization fund, reducing or even eliminating the need for an override, knowing again that we would be asking for money for a new school building. That has pretty real consequences to the service levels in the school. We discussed, not that we are talking about, we should think about that as 3 options to pick from, but models to help us strategically plan and get ourselves to a point where we need to discuss what is the level of service that we need to maintain for our school students, and what are we comfortable asking the town for, both in the forms of overrides over the next 10 years, how many that would be and what the dollar amount would be, as well, knowing again on top that there will be likely a school building project coming up. We began the conversation, certainly didn't finish it. I think the 2 important takeaways just in general for the group is the level of spending as it is right now is pretty significant, and we're worried that it will be too high over the long term, over the next 10 years. We need to find a way to bring that down, and that does mean impacting the level of services for all of our schools, or for our schools in general. And one of the things we want to work out is, what is the balance between those two? We want to make sure that we're not cutting too deep, but we want to also make sure that we're not asking for too much money in our overrides. Should an override not pass, that is really a catastrophic impact to our schools. It happened, not the last, but the override before that, and that was pretty significant, where programs were shuttered. We want to make sure we're not putting ourselves in a position for that again. But what that might mean is slowly changing the level of service across programs in our schools over the next 10 years to reduce that impact. We're going to have some follow-up conversations so that we can bring back to the broader, or the subcommittee will have some future conversations so we can bring back to the full school committee. Here's some specific points to discuss. We just started talking about it this evening, and we need some more time with it. Our intention is to do that over the course of the next several weeks in line with our current budget cycle. I think that it wildly changes the FY '26 budget that we are working through right now. But there's probably we want it to be at least a little bit of an input so that we can start thinking about if we're making changes to funding, this might be the first year that we want to start. So we'll bring that back in the next, for our next meeting, but that's what we started with. That was a lot, and it was high level because we have a lot of details to get into. Just pause there if there's questions or anything I can clarify.
You guys are meeting before the 27th?
Yes. That is our intention. We did not set a date yet. Yes.
Okay, and,
12th.
oh, vacation.
Taking vacation?
Yes, I am. Hope we all are. So, I know you said you're going to get more specific, but do you have anything tonight directly that you feel like we should all be keeping in mind to guide our conversation?
Maybe a little bit more about that. What are you thinking? Like
You
the
said,
amounts
like,
of the override?
We kind of were like, it won't significantly impact the FY '26 budget, but we could use this as a first year. Do you have any more direction there?
The way that started to model it was to say that if we wanted to make reductions to reduce the amount of the override and the frequency of the override, starting this year over the next 10 years, what would that look like? So in the models, we can sort of say, here's how much we would want to bring the FY '26 budget down from what we saw last week. That's just a math exercise. What I would prefer to do to bring some specific numbers, and what I brought up and what we asked Brian and Tom to think about, and we need to discuss in our next meeting, is give us some ideas of what that would look like, or a couple of things to consider so that we have something to discuss, as opposed to just randomly picking a number and say, bring it down by 10,000, bring it down by 300,000. That's hard to get a concept of what that looks like, and so we wanted something tangible to be able to discuss.
Well, we also have the added layer of now we have the insurance rates, so that's an extra, not insignificant amount of money that needs to be incorporated. We have to pay for health insurance, so that money's got to come from somewhere. So that's something that has to be done, and we, so we would have to decide, how are we going to get that paid for? Are we going to make more cuts? Are we going to take more from stabilization? Are we going to, before we even get into the, what you're saying of, so if we figure out how to cut an additional $180,000 to meet the healthcare needs, are we then going to ask for more to start to bring these lines together over 10 years? That's, and, we've already made cuts, so the conversations get tougher.
Is that helpful? Does that answer your question? Were you looking for something
No,
more
it
specific?
doesn't.
Dollar amount?
We didn't know about that
I wanna
until
make sure-
tonight, so.
We've just started, and we want to take some more time with it. But I also want to share more broadly, like sort of what our thinking is, so just trying to put a balance. Are you looking for a specific dollar amount, or what else can I say that would be helpful to better understand where we need to go?
Well, I guess, so you're anticipating coming back the 27th with kind of both, like, if we went down by this is what this would look like, and like, you think you'll be able to kind of have some projections in that sense of how it would impact this year specifically, and
Yes.
how it would set us up for different scenarios down
That's
the
right.
line.
That's right.
Okay.
Yes.
So I think in a way that almost kind of limits our conversation tonight, because we know that, like, there's going to be a lot more to consider, when we have maybe more specific scenarios.
Yeah, I would like to hear from the whole school committee, though, thoughts around where, I guess what the initial thinking is around the budget as presented, because there's a lot there, and knowing that there's been questions asked, there's been some, my words, pushback on some positions and not others. There's been things that that were reduced in the budget already that there's been conversation about perhaps adding back in, which changes things. I mean, for example, the world language position is not in the budget. So if the school committee is of the thinking that we need to keep that in the budget, then we have to add that back in. And so I need to hear those, Tom and I both need to hear those conversations so that we have some direction on where we need to go with the administrative team in preparing any kind of reductions to get to a percentage or a number, or, you know, as I said earlier this evening, that $184,000, almost 100, well, it's 184,355. That's new information just this afternoon. In terms of the additional 5% that we have to come up with for the health insurance increase. You know, just so everybody knows out there, we started with an anticipated, and we were carrying 10%. Then as budget development went along, we got word very early in January, after Maya had their annual meeting, they said the rates were probably going to be between the 10 and 15%. So Tom and I made a strategic decision to carry 15% in the budget that was presented. And then just this afternoon, we hear that it's actually at the full 20%. And so that's new information that now could be a game changer for other conversations, because we have to cover that $184,000.
So do we have a dollar amount for what that 5% is?
That's the 184,000.
Oh, sorry, did you say that
Yeah.
already? And that's.
It's not reflected
It's
in
not
that
very
budget.
No, it's not in the budget
We
book.
just heard about it.
Yeah.
They budgeted 15% for health, and now it's at 20%, so that
Yeah.
difference
the
is
net.
the 184.
So I want to bring up something that came up very briefly, because we're very pressed for time at the budget subcommittee, but in terms of, and then I want to relate it to what Dr. Blake just asked us for, but in relation to looking at a 10-year projection and trying to not rely on overrides, one thing that came up was, and I don't think we used these words, but what principles do we as a school committee want to use when talking about making cuts to go forward to not rely on overrides? And do we want to really maintain co-teaching, really maintain a certain class size, some criteria so that it's not an unorganized decision, but what principles would we use to guide us in making cuts to minimize the budget? So that being said, that's a huge conversation, almost a workshop, but what do we do about the fact that we just found out there's a $185,000 cut that needs to be made, and we've already presented, or been presented to by the administrators, and we have a public hearing on the 27th, and do we need to extend that public hearing so that we could better understand and give Dr. Blake and Tom an area to cut based on this new information? And keeping in mind that we do need to set up some principles for ourselves going forward in a big picture. So that came up very briefly.
Right. But are those our decisions? I mean, I think it has to be a collaborative, we're thinking money and also values and what things, kind of like Adam said, what things are dear to our hearts or community, or, what's really important to us to preserve. But I also think I really want to hear from you and your leadership team what's most important to them, because I think we both have to, because they're the ones doing the work and in the schools, and, you know, I know we make the decisions, but it kind of has to be both. Like, I don't feel like comfortable giving areas to cut. You know, I'm happy to be part of a conversation about what things are most important to us, and looking at different avenues, like maybe it's class sizes, or maybe it's, I don't know, co-teaching model, or start to have those conversations about, because maybe it's a little bit of multiple different things.
The current model says our budget's gonna go up 4.9% a year. That's not sustainable at that dollar amount. I agree, Jenny's point, we need to have a broader and strategic conversation. I don't think we need to do that in the next, like, few weeks. But I do think we should assume we need to make some further reductions, and we should talk about that over the next couple weeks to, at least for the FY26 budget, get us started down that path. And then we use the time between now and next year to say, long-term, with the next 10 years, what is the direction we want to go? But we should start this year. The dollar amount for that, I think we need to determine over the next few weeks of how big that is.
I think at a minimum, it would be nice to hear what you two and senior leadership come back as what you think is the best way to fund that $184,000, whether it's more cuts, whether it's more offsets, the combination of the two, so that we can have something to discuss. I think going beyond that this year for planning for the FY26 budget, I don't know about going beyond that. But yeah, and then having those bigger strategic discussions. But I like that we sort of have a model or a couple different scenarios of how to get us, you know, I keep talking about the two lines that diverge, like what we get and what we spend is just going like this over time. So this scenario one sort of parallels them, so at least we're not diverging. And then the scenario two sort of starts to bring those lines back together. And at the 10-year mark, we're sort of living within the appropriated money we get from the town, but not without significant cuts every year. But we wouldn't have that failed override, have to cut $1.5 million from the budget devastation.
It's a major risk, yeah.
But, you know, it'd be tough budget conversations, tougher and tougher budget conversations every year for the next 10 years to get us there.
Dr. Blake, have you, or can you discuss with other superintendents on, and you can't compare apples to apples, but how other towns have handled, because I'm sure we're not the only one who that's happening, and what they have done? That might be, we all have different programs, but still, there's basic.
Reductions.
Right, but I mean, how they did that. Just.
Yeah, I think I'd have to dig into it with them, but I mean, it's, a lot of our neighboring towns are having make reductions if they don't have, Pentucket, for example, has had failed overrides, and they have reductions, and they have to tighten the belt.
Yeah, so we just want to get ahead of that. Want to get ahead of that, and so
Yep.
it's palatable to some degree for the residents. Okay.
Another thing I thought of in the earlier discussion, Tom, was, is there a way that we could start to quantify any cost savings that will happen from a presumed new elementary building, and the presumed electrification of that building, and savings in utility costs, savings in maintenance costs? I mean, I know you've already alluded to the fact that our maintenance costs, even for this coming year, are down because we have the new though temporary, roofs on the buildings. So things like that. I mean, it will be a different ballgame when we have a new school. Maybe some expenses will go up, but is there a way to sort of start to wrap our hands around what, will we save $500,000 a year with a new building, or is that something that can be done or modeled?
I think we'd have to get a sense of what the building is.
Right.
So we have to maybe come a little closer to what we're looking at as for terms of what the campus is, what the building composition and size is. But, yeah, we should be able to, within,
In a couple of
months.
years.
Or months or a year, whenever, if we get past the feasibility study, then we actually have a building, right? We have a schematic design, we have a sense of size and scope and that. And then I think, part of that is actually going to be, a budgetary piece about what it could cost to operate that building. So, I think that's an excellent point. I don't think we're there yet,
Yeah.
but when we
If
have,
we're thinking 10-year projection,
Sure.
maybe in
Right.
2, we could start to have some of those conversations. And, I know some of the class size discussions come into that too, because we have some challenges in
sure.
numbers of sections and things because we have 2 buildings. And so there's just more flexibility in a new building.
Yeah.
Just to go back to the point that you originally made in terms of hearing from us on what we're thinking about, the things that we had all the back and forth on. I'm certainly happy to weigh in there, but I do wonder, like, as we just spent all that time talking about those things, and then we learned about the 5% increase, it's like, is it worth debating those things if we know that whatever we're going to present to reflect that additional 5% is going to, you know what I mean? It's going to add just more fuel to all of those decisions. So I'm happy to go there if that's helpful, because I know you just requested it, but if also that's going to change things markedly, then is it a good use of time?
Probably worth going through, but maybe let's not spend time on the detail of it, but that way we can share so you both know our reaction to the budget, that anything we didn't go through last. I think maybe do it that way, sort of in a short form, but go through it.
So do you want like the kind of the bigger items that we heard about, the health and the world language and drama? Like, did you want to start with that? Is that what you were talking about? Where you wanted
We
to
can
do that?
start with that, but there's the entire budget.
No, I know.
And I'll take it one step further. Are there things that we didn't put in there that you want to see? I mean, right now, we're talking about cutting, but, do we have enough money in there for transportation? Do we have enough money in there for sports uniforms? Do we have enough money in there for coaches? Should we be hiring additional custodians? I mean, that's what, we presented the budget, what we think, but are there areas that you're hearing in the community that should be,
Considered, yeah.
increased?
Hand dryers? Hand dryers, new hand dryers
Yep.
would be a nice increase.
Laugh, but their hands are wet.
See, yes.
So so next meeting, you're still getting feedback from us. So you wouldn't be presenting a finalized budget at that point. So, correct, right? So,
If I have the feedback, well, I'll meet with the team to make those, have those discussions and make changes.
We could vote at the next meeting to approve a budget, but we also have flexibility there too.
Yeah. We had talked at Budget Subcommittee about potentially delaying the vote on the budget till the 6th, potentially.
Wait for that?
I'm away that Thursday.
Are you Zoomable away, or can Tom fill in for you?
Tom can certainly fill in, because it's budget
Yeah.
stuff, if that's the only agenda item.
Okay.
Actually, we don't have to, I mean, that was just a,
Yeah, we don't- yeah,
if we're still hashing stuff out.
Yeah, it's good to know we have flexibility, somewhat.
I mean, I hate to oversimplify things, but if if the budget is going to end up with pulling out the health and PE and hoping for a paying grant for it, and the drama and, the drama position and, pulling that out and hoping for a paying grant for that. Those two things would get us almost to that 184,000, and maybe more. But that, okay, so then we covered that. That's still not getting us.
Temporarily, too.
And it's only a temporary
Right.
fix. It still doesn't get us to Sasha's point in terms of starting to make, systematic reductions over time to get us into a better place.
Right.
And I don't want us to lose sight either that the budget that we presented is already utilizing considerable higher amounts from our revolving accounts than we've done in the past in order to get us to that 4.3, right, 4.3% increase. So I don't want to lose sight of that.
And that's not sustainable to use that level of offsets.
Correct.
Is there a level of offsets that we can reliably rely on year to year?
Well, it really depends on the types of accounts that we're referring to. For example, the vast majority of our revolving funds have a source of a revenue, either on a monthly basis, for example, school food service, right? There are revenues in, there are expenses that come out, there are reimbursements from the state and federal government. So that becomes a fairly reliable, source of offsets.
Right.
Something like school choice, I know that's the elephant in the room, but that
No,
continues to
no, I
go
agree.
down. So the more that we receive fewer revenues from school choice, but the higher we rely on it, that's going to hit a wall real soon.
I should know if we could reliably say $300,000, $400,000, we think we could comfortably offset every year between circuit breaker and school
Well,
food service and.
Sure, let's go to the beginning of the budget book. I'm just going to do this. It's going to be easier than flipping through the PDF. Page 6 on the budget book, the bottom half of page 6 are most reliable and most used source of outside sources. We see a fairly big spike in the FY '25 use of outside sources in FY '26. The biggest increases are in school choice, in circuit breaker. Those remain to be the two large. Oh, and also the preschool revolving fund.
Right.
Those are now preschool revolving fund. I would say to your question, Kate, is a pretty reliable source.
Right.
We bring in a tuition, and it would be entirely reasonable of us to maintain a healthy but modest balance there, and begin to rely on those receipts more. That's why my comfort level in increasing that to $116,000 next year is quite fair. I mean,
what about, and circuit breaker too? Well, we talked about that earlier.
well, but circuit breaker, we have a healthy balance, right? It's about $1.2 million in circuit breaker now.
Right.
We're going to apply before the year is over $395,000 to that. So that, you know, 1.2 million will go down to, call it 800,000. Because we'll bring receipts in over the summer and into the fall. And then we're charging more than 500,000 next year, at least, obviously, according to the budget plan. But that is not a reliable fund moving forward based on this budget plan. Recalling Dr. Oxford's recommendations around reorganizing some of the special education needs and providing more in-district services to our out-of-district students, both not needing more students to go out to those district placements and potentially even bringing some back in. So
So if we're not expending
We're
it, we
not
don't have
expend-
it to
right.
get back the following
No,
year.
you
our
gotta get that
reimbursement
circuit breaker.
rate will go down the fewer out-of-district students we send out, because we will be spending less to be reimbursed in the first place. So it's not likely if, now I think, you know, we will see a positive gain in the reduction in out-of-district costs, even with the employment of a few more special educators in order to meet those service needs, you know, in-house. So there's a balance there.
But it seems like there is, I don't know what the, you know, if there's a magic number, but it seems like there is a reliable set of offsets that we could, even if it's a small number, 400,000, 300,000, that we could rely on every year, most
Well,
likely.
I mean, just looking at these, at this page here, we got last year, this year, and next year. I mean, I could go back in time and do some projections. I mean, I've already done projections, frankly, for 27 and 28, because I've done those in course of the cost of labor, right? We know what our collective bargaining agreements are going to cost us in 27 and 28.
Right.
And frankly, I've blown out those budget expenses. So we could, you know, just looking at page 6, it's probably fair to say that between, or among rather, excuse me, among these revolving funds and outside sources, $3 million a year is what we've been taking. And that's likely to be able to continue in some, you know, composition. Obviously, taking school choice out of the equation a bit, so that, you know, may make it more like $2.5 million a year. But, you know, if I may, I think this is exactly the type of conversation that the Budget Subcommittee held for an hour this evening. It's exactly what the full group, if I may be so bold, to say we absolutely have to have. That, you know, the concerns around our capacity to ask the town for more and more appropriation at the 4.9% is not a sustainable number.
Yeah.
So, and I think that, you know, being able to rely less on an override every 5 years, you know, that is, it's a very interesting way to run the school district. And I would fear, frankly, the day that doesn't come through. Then we'll be given somewhere between 3 months and 12 months to make a sizable cut to this, to the operation of the district. If I could just say one more thing, even to Jen's point earlier, and the consideration of the budget itself as a policy and a value document, I don't want to put words in Jen's mouth, but that's what made me think of it when you said your words. That this is as much a values document as anything else that you discuss as a matter of policy. Where are your priorities? What does this community want? What is this community willing to pay for? And what can this community afford within its willingness to pay for it too?
So I don't know if this is fair to put you on the spot this way, but given your concern around it, do you have a preference for how you would want to see it handled, or how you,
Oh, see what handled? I'm sorry.
you know, not not sticking with this model for asking for these huge operational overrides?
Well, that's a very big picture question that I think, but
At 10 o'clock at
it's,
night.
but it's entirely a reasonable one. I think that's
That's one of the
what
things we'll
the-
discuss
the-
and
the
share some.
budget
Yeah.
wants to
Here's some
flesh out.
options or recommendations to bring to, like, to two specific things. I can hit some, Brian, to your point of some areas of feedback, I can hit some, sounds like you've got some, but I can. First, for the theater arts, dance, if we did not hire that position this year, you need it for the new curriculum, what's the impact of that if we either don't do it or we wait? It just means we don't have that program this year, or are we in some violation because we didn't? Okay. So I would be in favor of not hiring that right away. I think the language cuts in elementary, I agree with everything that everybody said in the context of the overall budget. And in general, the spirit of what we talked about for the last few meetings has been cuts. I think it's necessary to take that away, especially since it's been put in place. You now have it in the middle school, so I'd be in favor of that. I'd want to know a little bit about more of some of the revolving accounts that we've talked about, but I think we'll do that as a follow-up. I have concerns about us funding the climate resiliency manager, not the position in general. I'd want to know specifically what the ROI that the school is getting, not just in general what the town's doing. Otherwise, I would suggest we do not fund the $30,000 for that next year. In general, questions about opportunities around some of our assistant administrative positions in a couple places. There was something about there was one around the special ed secretary. We have opportunity for that. Brought up the assistant principal at Doyon. Hiring, is there opportunity there, depending on how deep we need to go? Do we delay that a year? Do we share an assistant principal across elementary schools? Where do we have opportunity with curriculum assistant, math or coaching roles that we can take a look at to minimize, especially if we need to make further reductions in certain places? The theater, yes, those were mine.
Okay.
I said that fast, I can share.
Got 'em.
Trying to keep things moving. Haley, do you have ones you want to go next?
Sure. I think, while I totally understand the way everything around world language has been framed and logistically, I think more importantly in my mind than the budgetary issues around it, to be honest, sounds like that's something that's a real challenge. And if we're talking about the time on learning and the real intentional plan for solid learning blocks that are uninterrupted, I understand why those types of things are problematic for being able to do those things effectively with our core learning academic subjects. I do think in a world right now where we're seeing a lot of concerns around, lack of support in our country for respect for different cultures and diversity and that kind of thing, it's a real challenge for that not to be sort of a glaring implication for us as a community to make a choice like this. So that's what I'm struggling with. And I think I keep trying to bring it a little higher level, and again, in terms of really understanding what are the school improvement plans? What are those goals? What is the strategic plan for the district, and how are those goals specific to diversity and culture represented in other ways? And so I think some of that was spoken to in terms of how the Wit and Wisdom program does that with the ELA reading and those kinds of things, and I think that's great. I would like to see more and understand more, and this is where, being green and new, I don't have a lot of that information, but I'd like to know more in terms of how we're doing that well in other places to make sure if we make this cut, that is represented as a value in our district. And I guess I just don't have that information to be able to offset making this cut and feel uncomfortable about how it's represented in other places. So more homework to do there. Separately, in terms of the health piece, I asked the question, is it worth spending the time to figure out how do we actually flesh this out? What does this actually look like? Because again, if we're talking about not being able to do something effectively and adding in more programmatic elements that make it really challenging, I would have a hard time supporting that decision without understanding really what does this look like in action. And not saying it's not important. And again, taking that higher level to really understand how do the standards, the implications of the standard changes affect how overall we're adding more and more programs in. So I think when I asked that question, Dr. Wagner, again, sort of spoke to the difference between these two programs, and what I would like to move away from is comparing those two and just understanding, again, as those groups are doing curriculum assessments and trying to determine introductions of new programs based on standard changes and the way that those programs are vetted, not going through paying grants and that kind of stuff, but just the standard process around that. How do we do any of this effectively? So I don't know. It's hard not to, obviously to get into the granular detail and really understand the implications for these two specific things, but then also to really understand the higher level process around it. So I probably would, at this point, not support the health position, and am still really torn about the world language.
That was the health teacher at the elementary level.
Yeah.
Did Kate go?
I didn't go.
Oh.
Guess I'll go. I mean, in general, I'm supportive of the budget as presented. I see some areas, I'd request to take a really close look at some of the line items that aren't big ticket, but things add up. Things, I think I mentioned before, like furniture requests. I think each elementary school had $10,000. Middle school or high school had $15,000, and that's $35,000 together. And in particular, the elementary schools, it doesn't seem, I'm fairly confident we're getting a new elementary building, and so to be putting money into furniture that we're likely not going to bring into a new building doesn't seem super sustainable, and it feels not great to be cutting positions and buying furniture. So that's, again, not big ticket items, but there's, some other things I've seen in there, like music equipment for Winthrop, laminators, supplies, all those things add up, and I don't know if those are things that Fry's could help out with potentially to save a little bit of money here and there.
So before you leave that one, there were some IT ones too.
Okay.
That I did not mention.
Yeah, it was more just sort of like a
Yeah, no, but
critique
in
of
that
the,
vein, yeah.
supply
Yep.
things. And should we be able to fund supplies in our school budget? Absolutely. But it's tough to see those in the budget when we're thinking about positions. Let's see. I don't love the world language, but I understand it much better tonight. I think I did. It was helpful for Adam to explain last week about what the program really is. I think that was sort of eye-opening for me, and I feel like, to Jen's point, I don't think it is being implemented as it was envisioned because of many things, scheduling, time, all that. So I understand it. I support getting rid of that position because I do feel confident that, ironically, the culture in our elementary schools is very welcoming. I do think they do a really great job outside of the world, or in addition to the world language program, sort of, through all kinds of other programs, No Place for Hate, special programming. The Winthrop principals seem very open to sort of incorporating other things that I think could, I don't feel like that element of cultural awareness will be lost. I don't know. I'm torn about the PE health teacher too. I understand the standards, but just looking through them, I wonder if a lot of them are covered in things that we're doing anyways. So I'm on the fence about that one, but I would like to see a closer look at other ways we could, sprinkle the standards throughout, either classroom teachers or PE teachers, classroom teachers, other support staff to sort of meet those standards that I imagine many of which are being met through the work in the buildings already. I think that's it. And I guess, again, I'm curious how we are going to come up with that $184,000. And I think the longer-term picture, I don't think we should really be focusing on that so much for the FY26 budget, but I think those conversations should start to happen pretty soon after the budget season and really start to think about things like class sizes. At the elementary school in particular, we have some really low grades, and I want to think of ways that we could try to, discuss potentially having 5 sections in some grades over time. Not for 26 maybe, but I think those conversations are some of the things we need to start talking about long term.
Can I respond to just a piece about the furniture? I know you raised that last week, and I was thinking about it. I think the challenge there is, I agree with you, obviously, in terms of if we get a new school and having a furniture budget can't bring things across, all of that. But if we look at the timeline between now and when a new school opens, it's a lot of kids that have to cycle through, ill-equipped to do what they need to do. So while it may not need to be in our budget, I think there needs to be a solution for that. And I think that at Winthrop, I don't know if it was TWIG grants or through other grants, but they have systematically changed classroom furniture over a period of time, right? So
They've done some stuff and I think, excuse me, the furniture that I know Doyon is looking for is specifically tables for the art room.
that's like phase 1 though, right? Isn't they wanting to do like a...
They're trying to get on a cycle because they haven't had any kind of cycle, but I know that they wanted to start with the art room tables because they're not conducive. They're old, retired cafeteria tables. The TWIG grants that have been written in the past were for different types of classroom furniture, so it wasn't it wasn't just your standard desks and chairs. It was for innovative, flexible seating kinds of things. So that was very different. But yes, that's an accurate statement.
So Hamilton Wenham, right, they're in the process of a new school. What are they going to do with their furniture? Maybe it's something that we go and tag things that, they could pass to us. Maybe they'd have better things. What?
Interesting concept. I hadn't thought about that.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
Just reuse,
recycling it
recycle.
and,
Yeah,
I just think.
that'd be 3 or 4
I
years.
buy everything secondhand, so.
That'd be
it's
3 or
where my
4
goes.
years down the road, though.
Oh,
it's,
okay,
Because they're just,
True.
they haven't even broken ground yet.
Right.
They haven't taken the final vote.
Right.
So they're still
well,
ways
maybe there's
out.
another, I don't know,
So,
opportunity like that.
yeah. Next.
Okay. Were you done, Kate?
Yes.
Because world language is not what it was in the original rollout of it. I want there to be a world language program in the elementary schools, and I wouldn't vote to cut this unless there was a solid, whether it's a paying grant application or some solid language-based program to substitute it. Because even though the elementary schools have worked hard to have a good welcoming culture, I do think that it is something of value that can't be matched without, I don't want it to go away and there not to be some type of systematic learning of language in elementary schools. So if there was something solid in its place that would be more encompassing of the original intent. That went back to a paying grant. I think this just got watered down and got difficult because of the staffing issue, but I want to see some type of language somewhere in the elementary schools. And I know it's hard to guarantee that, but something, I won't vote to cut it unless I see something. The phys ed and health instruction, I believe after looking at those standards that a lot of it is being done. And what I don't want to suggest is that we put more on the classroom teachers, but I believe a lot of it is actually happening. Turn taking, sharing, like some of the stuff that is in those standards and listed. Yeah, I'm not going to vote in favor of a health teacher when I believe that a lot of it is either happening or can happen with our current educators. I echo Kate's concerns about furniture, but I believe, I also hear Haley's concern about, we have a new school that's still years away. I know from being on Payne and then being on the TWIG committee now that schools apply for, or the elementary schools apply for flexible seating grants, and I think they may have been denied. And when it gets questioned, it's because it's not innovative, and that's especially what the TWIG grant is. I think we need to allow for that innovation. We deal with so many, it's general education, but it's special education, it's sensory issues, it's the ability to sit still, furniture is a tool for education. But I think we as a school committee need to say, okay, this is innovative and it can come out of a TWIG grant. And I know that's small in the general budget, but bits and pieces. I do think the high school theater position is of value because I believe, I'm trying to get to it, and I should have asked this question before, but the theater, arts, dance, PE teacher, would that overflow into the middle school?
The FTE, I think, is located at the high school level.
Okay.
Would the theater position be split between the middle school and the high school, or would it just be a strictly high school position?
That's what I was.
That was the question.
That was just my question.
It's a full-time high school position.
And then I don't have the answer to this question, but this past year, the middle school theater productions, there was a part-time director, producer. Is that still in the budget?
It's a stipended position usually.
It is.
Okay. Well, then I would like to see, I know it's small, but I would like to see that removed if we hire this position. And then this position also cover middle school productions.
Can we cut stipends if they're contracted?
Huh? The drama position is after, I mean, the middle school program is after school hours. That's why it's a different.
Stipend.
Yeah.
Can I ask sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I had a question about the stipends for, so I'm just looking at the Doyon page, I haven't compared it to the Winthrops. For coordinators and mentors for DEEP, student leadership team, Early Act team, Ipswich advisors and mentors, math team. I don't really know what any of, I mean, I know what they are, but I don't know.
So those, for any club that meets after school, student leadership team, the Early Act, teachers receive stipends for everything like that. So
Those are part of the
there's-
collective bargaining
it's
units
all
that we
part of
can't
the
cut out of the
so
budget.
so not only do they receive the stipends, but the stipends are tied to the COLA. So whatever percentage increase, that also goes up. It is up to the administration to decide at the beginning of every year what stipends are going to, what positions are going to be filled by those stipends. We don't have to run all of them.
Like deciding whether or not these clubs stay, essentially. Got it, okay. So would this be the time you would be discussing that, or these are?
No, these are more placeholders, and given the dollar amounts for them, we wouldn't make that decision now. You know, I mean, for example, the Early Act Club is, I think, a very significant club. Other ones have, you know, just a few students participating in them. That's on an annual basis, make those determinations.
Sorry to interrupt you, Jen.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it is late. Yes. Yeah. Thank you. My apologies.
Jenny?
And the dollar value for all of those stipends is, I would say, you know, only $4,800. I don't mean that like it's
Right.
nothing, but it's.
Right. But district-wide
Oh, district-wide
stipends is a significant amount of money.
Okay, I will be short. I agree with the things that Sasha has recommended. I think they're all tough, but I think they make sense. So, ditto.
It's fast. Second that. I am kind of in line with that. I think it's hard because none of us want to, I love the ideas in the budget, but understanding what the budget subcommittee has presented, like, something's got to give. So I think sometimes the not adding things is a nice way to start, you know, unless we find out we need to add them. Okay, I guess I'm going a little longer than what you said. But I'd love to get a little creative. That's why I asked the question about the dance drama position. It's a neat position. I see the value there. I'm not on the committee, but I would imagine the paying grant committee may entertain that. And then the health, like others have suggested, is it a grant? Is it something that can be incorporated? But, you know, so again, the kind of low-hanging fruit is the newer things, but also, you know, we shouldn't just say check to everything we've already approved in years past. Like, I'm looking, I guess this is a question from last year, but the regular substitute line item went up significantly last year, and it's matched, this year matches last year, but the year before it went up, and I might need a refresher on why they all jumped.
If
Each
it-
school,
If it was up 2 years ago and then has come down, that was probably one of the post-COVID years when we were still having a higher absentee rate. That's just my guess. I don't know that factually.
regular substitutes was lower in '24, so again, this is a bit of a look back, but then this year is almost twice as much, and this is for each school. So,
One of the things that we did in coming into '25 is we funded all substitute budgets to the level that we knew that we needed. We were running pretty short in previous years, which is why it's practically level funded for next year.
okay. It's a lot. Yep. Okay. So, yeah. Got out some nitty gritty, and then we also are gonna have to have the bigger
Okay.
discussions, maybe.
Well, this certainly gives us some runway.
I have
So,
just one
appreciate
quick
that.
question on the theater arts dance position. Is that position, I guess I'm just curious what's happened with theater arts classes, electives, last year and this year. So some were run,
Yep, they were,
taught by an English teacher.
they were.
Is that, are those electives only going to not be taught by that English teacher? I guess, is the English teacher,
That's an accurate statement. They won't be taught by the English teacher.
they will be taught by this new teacher. So, and was the enrollment decent for those? Was it back up?
I think it was initially low.
Okay.
Right. So I might have a couple more questions I'll send you.
Yeah, if folks have other follow-up questions or things that we should take a look at, please just send me a one-way email, right, so we're not deliberating it. And Tom and I, despite it being school vacation week, some of us are working. So we'll be around to take care of some of that stuff. I'm kidding. I'm going to take a couple of days. But
Thank you for all your work on it.
I have one more thing I just want to say about the budget. I always have a hard time, shouldn't say always, but, we have this big health insurance bill. And then, in general, what I don't want to do is take educators away from students especially based on a health insurance bill. And I would like to develop a way, like, we're always going to have this, it used to be called, is it OPEB? Right? So I would like, and we talked about creating future, like, principles and values on how to reduce the budget over time, but it would be nice to come up with something that said, okay, so this is our bill, and where do we pay that from? And I'm very concerned, I've said this in the past, about our choice budget being dwindled down. And where we can bulk up on more revenue so that we can pay bills and not take educators away from students to pay insurance bills. That's all I had to say.
Do you want to bring that up, Sasha?
There's some money in the school committee budget line items that we would be happy to forgo if you want to take a look at some of those.
Not Laura's. Not Laura's salary, but any
Stipends, education, professional education.
professional
office supplies, might have to stop printing these.
I mean, seriously, it's, you know,
It's not nothing.
it's not nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think at some point we should vote to not get $200 a year.
Yeah.
Can we vote on that? Can we, I mean, at fall town meeting, can we just make a motion to not get paid? Because it's a lot of,
I was just gonna
I
say,
know,
I opted
I didn't
out.
know that until I
didn't
did.
want- know if I-
and
Yeah, you
But-
can opt out from it.
I know, I was just like a good girl and I did it all, but I would have happily opted out if I knew that was a choice.
That was like one of our
You could
first email
defund the line.
exchanges.
Right.
Defund my line.
Fund the line, and
Go
we don't
ahead.
have the money to pay you.
That's what we're.
Defund my line, that's fine, I don't want to get paid.
So, go ahead and add
I
that to the
just,
motion. Not that one, but just in general.
yeah, I
You're
just,
looking,
I struggle with that concept of defunding individual lines. I think that's dangerous. But also, not for nothing, you guys put in a lot of hours. So granted, it might be only $200.
we don't do it for the money.
But, no, but still, it's, you know. And correct me if I'm wrong, the other boards in town,
Make a lot more than we do.
yeah, are compensated quite differently.
It's gonna come up at bean counting, huh?
I like that. Bring that up.
Is the school
But they could donate it to the school.
I double dare you.
Have me there on a Saturday, it's gonna come up, things are gonna get crazy.
Get the tri-board.
I can't be there. I'm chaperoning.
You're chaperoning.
Chaperoning, oh yeah.
That's worth $200 right there.
Right, there you
That's
go.
where that's gonna go.
I love chaperoning.
And the
Oh,
teachers
there's your
get,
field trip line item.
the teachers get paid $200 for going overnight, so there you go.
Uh-oh. We get 200 a year.
All right.
Wait, sorry, it's escaped me. Oh, just a reminder to everybody, we vote on a dollar line. We vote on a budget number. We don't vote on this position, that position, this line, that line. So I think we all know that, but just,
Oh, no, that is very helpful.
yeah. And then once we vote on that, and hopefully the town votes on it, then that's the budget, but it doesn't necessarily mean, you know, there's some, we vote on a bottom line, not on a, you can't be like, I vote on these things, but yes on these things, no on these things. It doesn't work that way. It's like a yes, no.
Right. Any last comments about budget? Okay, to be continued.
Yeah, we're not done yet.
So, I know, so it's late. My concern is, I don't think the next meeting is going to be any quicker. I do think at least 2 out of the last 3 items can be 5 minutes. How is everybody feeling?
That sounds good. I would be open to starting, I don't know if I'm home, starting an hour early next meeting. So if it goes late, it's not like 11. I don't know if that's possible for anybody's schedule, if that's possible at all.
I could
But instead
do
of
that.
7, we could do 6. It could still be just as long, but it would be
Yeah,
earlier.
right.
Sorry.
I can't.
Okay.
I'd rather just spend 15 minutes and
Oh,
wrap
yeah,
up, but
yeah. If it's going to be that,
I could,
I'm in.
either way.
What's that?
I'd rather just wrap up since we're here, but
Okay.
Perfect.
All right. School choice discussion. Dr. Blake, do you want to present on this?
Yeah, so I think the last, at the last, or one of the last school committee meetings, we had a discussion about school choice and opening seats, whether we were going to open seats or not. Laura had put together some information in terms of our numbers for,
Okay. Yeah, we have some historical
have
context.
some,
Oh, wow.
there we go. So the question was, you know, there was talking about opening seats or not opening seats. The middle and high school are not looking to open seats in grade 6 or 9. This historical data looks at the number of openings that we offered, how many applications were received, and then how many actually enrolled. So you can see that, you know, while we make the openings, we don't come close to filling those seats.
So how do we reconcile this recommendation with the declining availability of choice?
In the short term, I don't think we do. I think there's, you know, the last spike of school choice students that we saw was years ago when this building was coming online, and we saw an increase then, and it, you know, and those kids have worked their way up through the system since then. Other districts around us have built new schools, so we're not seeing an increase. You know, I don't see a need anywhere down the line for parents looking to choice their kids to Ipswich because we have newer buildings anymore. You know, I know Georgetown is struggling budgetarily. They may have, you know, they may be looking to do something in the future, but I don't know that that would be for the 25-26 school year. So in the short term, I don't see it as a remedy, and even even, you know, at $5,000 per student and $7,500 for special education students, you know, with the offset there, we're not going to make up $1 million. It's in terms of, you know, the number of kids. So I don't see that as a long-term solution necessarily.
However, if what you're saying is we're opening spots, but we're not getting as many applications, it can't hurt to open more spots. Because what if we do? What's the harm in opening a spot? Like two, and like Doyon says they want to open one in grade 1. Why not 2?
But don't you think she recommended 1 because, or he, sorry, forgot which school we're looking at. Don't you think the administrator recommended 1 because they don't have the capacity to take 2, or it would?
I think I looked at the class size and.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's just is it class size or is it class need? Is it?
I think it's both. I suppose we could open 2 seats in those grade levels. I wouldn't look to open more seats in other grade levels if they're not recommended.
I guess I'm curious the rationale for not recommending them, like in 9th grade.
You mean what grade?
Like 9th grade. That might be I mean, back, you know, it was 22, 23. We opened, I don't know, we had a generic number of seats in the high school, 25. We got 13 applications for grade 9, 5 enrolled. And I know the money from those kids is less because they're only here for 3 or 4 years versus if you get a first grader, then you get them theoretically you get their tuition for a longer period of time. I don't know. I mean, I just think we've heard Tom say in budget subcommittee meetings, you know, we're graduating classes with 8, 12 choice kids, and we're bringing up grades with, you know, 2, 3 choice kids, so that's, we're graduating many more than we're sort of adding to the pipeline, and,
I also think, and I've shared this theory with you, Dr. Blake, grade 6 and grade 9 is a new start. And it could be families looking for a certain program that we have, like 3 years of language in middle school, or music programs, or theater.
Yeah.
And looking to what Kate pointed out in 2022, 23, 6th grade, we received 5 applications, 9th grade, 13 applications. So if you just look at the number of applications, it kind of lends to my theory of people seek a difference at a school, a finite start. So for the 6th grade and the 9th grade, I think it could, I think that's a place to open up spots.
In talking about, in talking with the administrators the other day, at the high school level in particular, they would much rather go through the Educatious program, where we get, was it
Lauren?
Up $14,000.
$14,000 per student, and there's a vetting process that we work through?
those international students?
Yes.
About
Yep.
how many do we see per year?
2 or 3, I think.
Yeah.
It's 3 this year. It's 2 or 3.
Is that an either or? Can we open 2 choice spots and still go through Educatious?
We can. The administrators would rather do Educatious than open school choice seats.
The administrators,
I mean, I think we've talked about, there's some unknowns with it, with accepting choice students. And I'm sure many times they bring great value to the district. But it's unknown, it's a lottery, so we don't, not that I'm saying we want to pick who we get, but, it is an unknown, so, I'm a little hesitant to go against the administrator's recommendations. Are we voting, like, choice yes or no tonight, or are we voting numbers?
So
I feel like
we have an
historically we've
option. Yeah,
said,
we can, according to Laura, we
you
can
know.
vote just to
Just in the interest of time.
do choice, and then we can hash out the numbers later if people have questions. Shall we go that route? And if people have
That seems
questions,
like
we're
we're
going to
gonna go.
participate in
Yeah.
the program.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, okay.
Do we
yeah.
want to open up choice seats? Yeah. Okay. Is anyone opposed to opening? Sorry, I'm taking over. I'm trying to get things wrapped up here.
Go ahead, go ahead.
Is anyone opposed to opening choice seats in some grade levels next year?
Sounds like you're about to make a motion.
Sounds like I am making a motion to approve participation in the choice
Choice program.
program for the 25-26 school year.
second.
Moved by Kate, second by Jen. Further discussion? All in favor? Great, unanimous, passes, and we will revisit, ask your questions to Dr. Blake, and we'll get back to it next meeting. All right, FEFIs, you want to give like I don't think there's too much to update here. Real
Nope.
quick update.
I will try to be quick. So FEFIs, we, and by we, I mean Laura updated, well, I wrote the content and Laura updated on the district website. So if you go to the district website, staff resources, FEFIs program, I think it says, all that content is new. There's like an overview. It's just more streamlined and clear. There's new instructions. There's an FAQs. I'm in the process of putting together a slideshow for applicants to, like a PowerPoint, to help them on how to apply, which is basically on the website, but I'm making it into a PowerPoint as well. And certain steps in the process are new, so that will be helpful. So please check out the website content, make sure it looks good. And also thanks to Laura, and Diana, we've revamped the application form a bit. It's going to be a Google form with the budget form sort of embedded in it that the applicants will need to make a copy, fill out, and then reattach. And the Google Forms, through some technological magic called Autocrat, will like mail merge them into a folder, and then Laura can rename them, send them out for signatures, put them all into a Google folder that will then be shared with the Payne Grant Committee. So the process has been sort of revamped. I think it will be more efficient, less of a headache for Laura, hopefully clearer for the applicants. And so the Payne Grant Committee will get a folder that has all the formatted applications, the budget sheets, and then a little spreadsheet of all the names of the grants, the amounts, and make sure that all the approvals, so the building principal, the superintendent, and the tech department will approve all grants. Our thought is that applications will open Friday, February 14th, and close Friday, March 14th, which is earlier than previous years. So our plan is to meet again in late February to review the Payne Grant Committee rubric that we have not looked at yet, to make sure that we are all on board with the rubric. If we have any changes to the rubric, we will bring it to the full school committee probably on the 6th. Or the 27th, maybe the 27th. I don't think we're going to get to changing the DDA policy this year, but I'm pretty happy we've sort of revamped the process, the application form, and I think then after that, we can start to relook at the policy and some of the bigger sort of philosophic questions that we want to talk about. So we've gotten a lot done. Mr. Janelfi plans to meet with the Payne Grant Committee before they even look at the grants, just to sort of go over like roles and responsibilities. They'll have access to that slideshow. We'll show them our DDA policy so that everybody sort of, before they look at the grants, hopefully we'll have a good understanding of their role and the expectations. They'll go over the rubric together. So it seems like it'll be a more rigorous process this year.
That meeting is scheduled for March 3rd, so that fits into what you.
Okay, so then we will look at any rubric changes the 27th. Because I think we're planning to meet the 25th. I haven't scheduled it yet, but I think most people are free if Dr. Blake is free. At any time. We can
Be
meet.
that night.
It shouldn't be that long of a meeting. So I think it's 25th
25th.
of February.
Policy Subcommittee at 7.
Okay, I didn't do the 24th because I think there's a select board meeting, capital plan.
I'm out that day, the 24th, but the 25th is Policy Subcommittee at 7, if we could do it earlier or later.
Earlier?
We can, well,
Yeah.
we can chat after.
Okay. But that's a lot of progress.
Great. Questions for Kate?
Yeah, I do. So when we met, one of the things we talked about, and I see on the website that you guys added what roles make up the committee. I think we had also talked about listing who those people are.
Yeah, we have to figure out how to get that. How to list the Payne Grant Committee members on the website somehow. I wonder if it could just be a link to like
A Google Doc.
a Google Doc table that has, yeah, I mean, I think we want like, the elementary
Well, that's there. I
teacher,
think you
this is
added
the
that.
name, this is the date,
Yeah, okay.
but the term dates too, like when they're done, would be great.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
were putting that together last time, so it's in there. There are just a few iterations of it, so I can make sure you're looking at.
The 3 people with
I
expiring.
was just gonna say, those 3 people, I wanted to confirm that those people who were expiring have all agreed to an additional 3-year term, so we're good to go there.
So we don't need to recruit new members.
Yeah. So I can,
To reappoint
I would, I was going to say, do we need to have a opening, like a application process? Or,
This is
you know
a
what I mean?
policy question.
well, that, yeah, this did come up in the, there is no clear policy around that. So we decided that, we discussed. Just
I
We should
feel
we should
like-
reappoint them
inviting-
at the next meeting.
What's that?
We should just reappoint them at the next meeting. If they've already agreed to be reappointed, I think we should just
Yeah,
vote to reappoint them at the next
And I
meeting.
think that, like, how we go about getting appointees and what it looks like when people are, you know.
That's
it-
part of the whole
we
policy.
should- we
yeah.
need to, I think this year's just gonna be a little bit of an off year, likely, you know, and we can
But
really flesh it out in
last
the
year,
policy.
we had to recruit many people,
Right,
and it was
but
a
it was
lot. So at least,
open,
yeah, this will be,
you know.
we'll just
My
have to.
term is also up this year, and so there'll be a new high school rep that will be presented like after this year's service is done, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, because I'm gonna graduate. I last,
Comes out.
you know.
But it's only one of 5 people, right?
It's only one
So
five, but
it's-
I'm just saying, like, you will have to reappoint, like,
Yes.
somebody
Yep.
will present, you know.
Yeah.
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 I think you guys vote on who,
Yeah, but like,
And it
school
is-
committee has to approve them.
Oh,
Because I remember, like, Jeff, like, sponsored me
Okay.
last year. A few years, yeah.
All right, great. Thank you, Kate. All right, policies, they're not bad. I hope people looked at them. I'm just going to read, like, in buckets here. Okay, so there were minor wording changes to GCE, GCG, GCIA, GCJ, GCK, GCO, GCQF, GDA, GDB, GDO, ID.
Get all that, Laura?
minor changes.
Yes, that's literally it, yeah. And it's all in the policy minutes, too. There, minor wording changes, but a little bit of elaboration to incorporate some legal wording per MASC for GCF and IB. Okay. One more here. EEAA was about transportation. MASC reworded it. We had Tom review it, make sure it was what we were doing and everything matched up, and Tom confirmed the changes match in the wording, continue to match our practice. Recommended adopting that wording. GCRD, it had minor changes, but it did add some wording and context to tutoring restrictions, which match our practice. And ICICA added wording, but they're consistent with our practice. And then we recommended 3 for deletion, GDQC, GDQD, and IA.
Because,
Obsolete. And of those two, like MASC no longer carries them, and they're kind of recommended policy manual, and we looked at them and said they're not really adding value.
Which one was transportation?
EEAA.
it's towards the bottom.
Hmm?
I'm saying it's towards the bottom.
Oh. Great. See, I told you I wouldn't be bad. What up? Okay, so I'll entertain a motion.
Move this is me. Move to support policies
As
as
presented.
presented this evening.
Second.
Moved by Kate, second by Haley. Further discussion? All in favor? Great. Unanimous, passes. Okay, new business? Consent agenda. Move the Ipswich School Committee to approve the following: meeting minutes from December 12th, 2024, meeting minutes from January 16th, 2025, meeting minutes from February 5th, 2025, a donation in the amount of $1,237.41 from the Ipswich Education Foundation for the 2025 robotics competition to be deposited into the high school gift account, and a check in the amount of $859.70 from Brookline Bank to be deposited into the Winthrop Student Activity Account.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Jenny, second by Kate. Further discussion? All in favor? Great. Unanimously passes and approved. All right, is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Jenny,
All in favor? Great. Adjourned at 11:01.